Well, of course, I started the show with I Got You, Babe from Sonny and Cher on this Monday, the 2nd of February. You could go back to last year, February the 2nd, 2025, or the year before that, February 2nd, 2024, as long as it was a work day. It was a day that started with I Got You, Babe by Sonny and Cher because, of course, the song is synonymous with the movie Groundhog Day. And as Clive said in his email to me early this morning, you want a winter prediction? I'll give you a winter prediction. It's going to be cold, it's going to be gray, and it's going to last you the rest of your life. So said Bill Murray's character in the movie Groundhog Day. And of course, I will just repeat the song. I can guarantee you already next year, on February the 2nd, 2027, I will once again begin the show with Sonny and Cher's I Got You, Babe, because it's like Groundhog Day here on the show every February the 2nd. How are you feeling this morning about Punxsutawney Phil, who predicted this long and cold winter will last for another 6 weeks? His annual prediction translated this morning by handlers at Gobbler's Knob in Western Pennsylvania. Yes, the locale of the movie Groundhog Day.
There is a shadow here on my ground. 6 more weeks of winter abound.
Now, that's Punxsutawney Phil, and that's Gobbler's Knob in Western Pennsylvania. We could go to Quebec for Fred Lamarmotte, who made his prediction for Groundhog Day, calling for an early spring. And then, of course, we've got Wiarton Willie just a few hours northwest of here in beautiful Bruce County. And Wiarton Willie made his prediction with the help of Mayor Jay Kirkland.
What Willie told me is he did not see the sun. So everybody knows what that means. 1, 2, 3. It's an early spring.
And that, of course, is cause for celebration. We won't even talk about Atlantic Canada's Shubenacadie Sam because so brutal is the winter there that they couldn't even hold Groundhog Day festivities today. We're just going to stick with what Wiarton Willie had to say and go for the early spring, okay? I'll even go with Fred Lamarmotte for the early spring. We need it. But hey, it's a sunny start to this first full week of February at work, and we'll take that as well. Conservative Charlie on the phone with us early this Monday morning. Phone lines open as soon as we begin the show.
I'm glad you brought that up.
What part?
What a good intro. You know, personally, I don't care about any American groundhog, but Mike, you know, Wiarton Willie, he's a true Canadian icon. And Willie, he brings out the best in everybody, Mike, and makes people proud to be Canadian. So, Mike, I'd like to see Wiarton Willie named honorary captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Mike. He would be much better than the uninspiring American prima donna that we got for current captain now, Mike. So maybe you can get on the bandwagon with this.
I thought you were going to nominate Wiarton Willie for Prime Minister the way you started, Charlie.
No, sirree.
Okay.
Honorary captain of the Maple Leafs.
All right, Charlie. Thanks for the call. Thanks for the dig at my favorite NHL team, who, by the way, I will point out, won the game on Saturday night. And in true hockey fashion, for at least me, I did not stick around for the shootout. It was a pretty entertaining game, a very entertaining overtime on Saturday, Leafs and Vancouver Canucks. And then, since nobody could score in the 5 minutes of overtime, rather than extend overtime, we should play overtime for at least 10 minutes. And if you can't settle it after 10 minutes, then call it a ding-dang tie for all I care. The shootout is goofy. It's dumb. So I turned my TV off and I went to bed because I'm not going to watch a shootout. I wouldn't watch them in the OHL either if I wasn't contractually obligated to stay and broadcast them for you. But every once in a while that happens. And so I'm forced to do it. Like that time last year when it was a 15-round shootout between the Kitchener Rangers and Sault Ste. Marie Greyhounds up in the Soo. Nonetheless, I don't like the shootout. If I don't have to broadcast it to you, I will not participate in the shootout. I won't watch that goofy thing. And thus, I turned off the TV before the Leafs won the game in a shootout. But it was entertaining while they actually played the game of hockey, which was fun. And so you can want Wiarton Willie as the honorary captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs all you want. I'm quite content, thank you, with Austin Matthews, initials AM, the greatest hockey player in the world today. Let's get down to business on the show, shall we?
1, 2, 3, 4. Can I have a little more? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I love
Let's start at 1, okay? Your Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning, the 2nd of February. Fire crews on scene of a house fire in Waterloo. Investigators say no one was at home at the time of the blaze when it broke out on Seawind Trail earlier this morning. That's in the Bridge and University area. I'm sure you can still see the smoke in the air. Number 2, a Sunday afternoon house fire in Guelph saw firefighters rescue one resident who had to be sent to a trauma center with serious injuries. The Guelph Fire Department and Guelph Police both responded to the scene soon after noon yesterday on York Road near Morris, which is not far from Stevenson Street. Cause of the fire is still under investigation. Number 3 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, a Black History Month. Grand River Transit bus is back on regional roadways this month. The design stands out with its bright greens, yellows, oranges, and reds. Its theme is Black Excellence, past, present, and future. You can take a look at kitchener.citynews.ca to see the photo of the Grand River Transit Black History Month bus yourself. And we're talking about Black History Month on the show this morning, just after the 10 a.m. news, so about an hour from now. Number 4, the Lake Erie Jackals handed the KW Titans their 4th loss of the season yesterday, 117-112. The loss drops the Titans to 8-4 on the season, which is still good for second place behind the league-leading Sudbury 5. And number 5 on your Farwell Show 5 this morning, Canadian folk legend Joni Mitchell accepted the Grammy last night for Best Historical Album. The 82-year-old singer-songwriter won for Joni Mitchell Archives, Volume 4, The Asylum Years. And that is your Farwell Show 5 for this Monday morning. As mentioned a moment ago, the moment our show begins every day, our phone lines are open to you. We love interacting and engaging in the conversation. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Marino is on the phone with us early this Monday morning. Hello, Marino.
How are you, Mike?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good.
Good.
My wife and I were in Niagara Saturday night at the Guess Who concert, and I'll tell you, Cummings and Bachman still sound incredible.
I love it.
They put on a really great show.
So glad you got a chance to see that. I got to see Burton Cummings this past summer at Blues Fest in Kitchener and agreed. He sounded great.
Yeah, they really did well. If you get a chance to see them on their tour, it was well worth it.
Thanks, Marino. I'll make a note for sure. Appreciate the call.
Have a good day, Mike.
You too, my friend. Great to hear from you. Glad you got to take in some great Canadian music. Hey, while we're on the subject of music, why don't I let you in on the theme for this week's All Request Friday? And I got to give Clinton, Farwell's Force member number 35, credit for this one. And that is because we are marking Black History Month. It began officially yesterday. I mentioned already. We'll be talking about it on the show about an hour from now. But in honor of Black History Month, let's spend our first All Request Friday of the month celebrating Black artists, okay? So your favorite song from your favorite Black artist. That will be our All Request Friday theme this week, Black artists. So think about it. Let me know via email, mike@570news.com, or just give us a call and let us know the song that you would like to hear a little bit of on our All Request Friday this week as we celebrate Black artists. All right, we're at that time of the show where we get ready for our morning wake-up call. There is a lot to talk about. How about Ontario Premier Doug Ford saying, yeah, I'm going to run in another provincial election? Or Pierre Poilievre with a resounding 87% support at his leadership review in Calgary this weekend. Pretty big numbers for sure. And then, of course, there is that poor fellow in Kitchener. Many of you made me aware of this over the weekend. And boy, oh boy, this poor fellow says, I've been doing my best with all the snow on the sidewalk, but the city came by and cleared my sidewalk for me. And now I'm going to have to pay for that service provided by the city. And I was doing the best job I could. Why is the city picking on me? Couldn't we get a mulligan at least once in the weather, the likes of which we've had this winter? Surely we don't need tickets, warnings, or the city to come by and clear our sidewalks for us, do we? We'll talk about that. Your morning wake-up call. Either you make it or I will on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Did you hear the one about the Kitchener resident who had his sidewalk cleared by the city and will subsequently pay the bill that the city leaves for providing said service? The story appeared on the Friday evening news, CTV News Kitchener at 6. I was already at work, if you will, for the Kitchener Rangers game. So I was oblivious to said story being aired, but I received multiple messages from you about it. And there seems to be a great deal of frustration around the fact that a resident can have their sidewalk cleaned by the city and then the city leaves them the bill for the work. And look, I hear you. I get it. And I'm trying to figure out the city's position on this, because when CTV Kitchener reached out, the city just pointed our media colleagues to their snow clearing policies for residents. And what I think that does, I'm going to defend the city here, and you can see this differently, and we can talk about it, absolutely. But I think it's an effort on the part of the city to not punch down, if you will. Kind of like, if I may go back to that campaign that's being run in Cambridge right now around snow clearing, and you've got, Peter parking illegally or whomever it is, and Ivan impatient that calls after 45 minutes. Look, I have no doubt that people do call very shortly after the snow stops and complains about not having a plow yet, or people parking when they shouldn't be parking during snow events, making things difficult. I get it. But as the municipality, I think you have to stay on the highest road possible. So I suspect that there were complaints, at least one complaint, if not more than one complaint, about this particular homeowner's sidewalk. And so the city is obligated to go about its business of responding to the complaint. And what happens, I think we know this, right? If there is that complaint, or if your sidewalk is not being cleared to the standard the city demands in its bylaws, then you will be given a warning. You'll be given the opportunity to clear the sidewalk yourself. And if you fail to do so, the city will come and do it and then charge you for the service. And that's what happened here. And look, I get it. It has been a brutal winter, and we can absolutely look at the state of many of our streets and say, well, hang on a second here. Why are you being so hard on me when you're not doing a very good job of keeping our streets clear this winter? And it's a fair argument. In the big picture, I would like to think that we could give everybody, homeowners included, a little bit more grace this winter, just given the kind of winter that it's been. And I sincerely doubt that this particular individual is the only person with a sidewalk that's not scraped down to the bare pavement. I mean, come on, the way this winter has gone. So it's tough to be singled out. However, since we haven't heard about dozens of these tickets being issued or sidewalks being cleared by the city, I don't think this is some sort of rash of tickets being handed out or work being done on the part of the city. They're just responding to complaints or problem areas. I don't think they're being overly punitive, and we know how the system works. You get your warning. You have a chance to still clean it up. If you don't do that, then the city comes in. I feel bad for this guy. I do, but I'm kind of on Team City here. Listen, Rosie, the pandemic pup, and I walk every day, and there are very few really clean sidewalks. We're fine. We're able-bodied. We can get by. Rosie doesn't care at all. She loves jumping over the little snowbanks and prancing along like she prances along. But the rules are the rules. And again, I'd love to see in a winter like this everybody get a little bit more grace because it's been so difficult. But there are sidewalks that are clear right down to the bare pavement. Clearly, it can be done. So that's the standard we're all supposed to be aiming for. We'll go to the phones. Lots of you on the phones this morning, starting with Steve. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning. Okay, so full disclosure, Brian is a close friend of mine. We both coach U16 hockey.
Okay.
I would just point out, though, that regardless of that, I thought it was absolutely ludicrous that the city showed up to do his sidewalk and hit him with a huge fine for doing so, and they go up to the property line and then stop at his neighbor's, which is exactly the same, if not worse, than what Brian's was. That is absolutely ludicrous. Why, if it was that detrimental to human health, why didn't they just continue clearing what is the entire friggin' street? Like, it's a joke. But to further that, my house backs onto the Fisher-Hallman Trail that goes all the way down from, Ottawa Street down to the Sobeys on Max Becker and all that. And I can tell you that I walk my dogs, I see people riding their bikes, and that pathway, that public pathway, which is about 5 feet wide, is worse than what Brian's sidewalk is. So if the city can come out and go heavy-handed and fine people, why can't they keep up to their own standards? Like, it's a joke. Like, this city's a joke. So I would like to see somebody get all the city councilors and all the regional councilors' addresses and go and make sure their sidewalks are up to snuff.
Okay.
But I guarantee they aren't.
Yeah, no, and Steve, that's a fair point all around. The one thing I would say about the trail that you reference is I wonder if there's a sign posted, because Rosie and I walked one of our favorite trails yesterday, and the sign is posted that there is no winter maintenance on that particular trail. So the city may not. But your point still stands when it comes to municipally owned sidewalks. I can tell you one of the worst sidewalks that Rosie and I do walk on a regular basis is right out front of school. Pretty sure the school board's in charge of that one, and it ain't no picnic walking along. So I get it. It does feel overly punitive that for whatever reason, poor Brian Sandow was singled out in this. But remember, it's not like the city just comes under cover of darkness and clears the sidewalk. You get the warning, then you got to get your act together. And if you don't, then the city comes out and does the clearing. That's how it works. Shane, Farwell's Force member number 228. Good morning.
Good morning, sir. So if that's the case, then tell me why. I just drove my tractor trailer down Homer Watson, passed by Pioneer Park, drove down Trillium in Strasbourg area. And absolutely none of those sidewalks are down to bare, and I know that the city or the region takes care of those. And yet, if they're doing that, not being able to keep up, well, how come?
What sidewalks? Hang on. What sidewalks does the city take care of on Homer Watson and Trillium Drive?
All of it, from basically from the 401, all the industrial, all the way down Homer Watson towards.
So are you talking about the multi-use trail?
If that's what it is, I'm not 100% sure.
But again, so I would say the same thing. Got to check. Does it get winter maintenance? Because the trail that Rosie and I walk says there's a sign posted says no winter maintenance. Use at your own risk.
It's a main sidewalk that runs right down Homer Watson.
I understand that, but is it posted with winter maintenance or not?
No,
okay.
It's not.
Okay.
So, and the same thing with the sidewalks in the Strasbourg Trillium area. Those are all city-owned. They're not down to bare. How can we turn around and send city crews down to do private citizens' sidewalks?
Because you get a warning.
I understand that, Michael. Okay. Hang on a second. How can we send city crews down to do private sidewalks when they can't even keep up with their own stuff?
Yeah.
So you're pulling people from taking care of municipally run sidewalks or municipally owned sidewalks down to deal with private residents.
I get you. I hear you. And again, in the big picture, I would love to see grace extended to everyone this winter. Everyone, from plow operators to private homeowners. I'm with you. But you get your warning, and then you got to respond to that. And if you don't, this is the end result. Mike, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. I was visiting my mom's place last weekend, and a lot of the neighbors use snow blowers, and they're not down to the bare pavement or cement. What I would like to see is the law modified that says if you clear it, right, and it's safe to walk on, right, it's fine. I find it when they put it down to the bare pavement, when Raffy Ravioli, the dog, and I walk it freezes. And it's far more dangerous to walk on a bare cement than it is on something with maybe a half a centimeter of snow on it, because you can get some traction.
Yeah, I've heard that too, because I posted pictures on our Facebook page last week of what I think are the gold standard sidewalks in the city of Kitchener that Rosie and I walked. And I'm not going to buy into it's less safe when it's clear to the pavement. I can't get behind that. I'm sorry. And again, if we start getting into the half centimeter or 2, whatever we're going to put down as, a minimum standard of clearance, is it an even surface? Is it an uneven surface? Because there are a lot of uneven surfaces out there. Paul, last word to you on this one.
Hi, Mike. Good morning. I think part of the issue is, and what people are missing, this guy had a complaint filed against him, and now he's got to pay. Who complained? I don't know. I know. I get it. It's true. How about a Freedom of Information Act to find out who complained, or if the homeowner knows, put a claim into the city on his property and let him pay the money. Sure. But see, this is the thing, Paul. Again, it's not like they just come out and clear it. You get a warning and you get time to get your sidewalk in shape. And if you don't, then the city comes in. Well, I believe the homeowner had picture, or at least some TV crew was there filming. There were plenty of other sidewalks beside it. So, you know what he could do is just call everybody. Call the city on every home property and see what kind of result we get now. Yeah, and I think that's fair, and that's where this sort of thing leads. I feel awful for the guy. I do. And I really wish we could just this winter give everybody a bit of a break. Like, haven't we had enough just thanks to Mother Nature? But the rules is the rules, and they were enforced. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Do you remember the waves made last week by BC Premier David Eby? At a meeting of premiers out west, David Eby, the Premier of British Columbia, described a group of Alberta separatists who had reportedly met with officials in the U.S. looking for some financial assistance to help Alberta in its quest to separate from Canada as treasonous. And when asked to clarify his remarks, Premier David Eby doubled down.
This is a country we have to fight for. There are lots of people who would like to take it from us. We need to express in this moment, especially when the country faces such a profound threat, we need to express that we will fight for this country, that we'll stand up for it, and that those who don't wish to, those who would solicit a foreign government to try to come in and take over our country or break it up, that's not part of our vision for Canada. That's not Canadian conduct. And in fact, I described it as an old-fashioned word because we haven't had to use it for a long time. In my opinion, that is treasonous activity, and it needs to be called out. It needs to be stopped.
That is BC Premier David Eby in a follow-up question to his accusation that these separatists from Alberta engaged in treason. Stephanie Carvin is an associate professor in international relations at Carleton University, joins us to talk more about it. Stephanie, good morning.
Good morning.
So would this qualify as treasonous behavior?
So I think this is one of these areas where you have the legal answer and then you have the non-legal answer. And I also want to preface this with the fact that I'm not a lawyer, but I used to work in national security. the reality is our legal definition of treason is really, really, really out of date. And just to give you an example, the last person who was tried and executed for treason in this country was in 1946. And it was someone who was executed for fighting for, I was Canadian who was fighting for the Japanese. And he was executed under the English Treason Act of 1351. So that's kind of what we're looking at here when it comes to charges, right? 1351. So would that withstand a modern day charter challenge? Probably not. No. So no. So the issue is that a lot of our laws around treason are quite frankly medieval in the literal sense, and then also the ones that we do have that are currently on the books as well, that are in the criminal code, tend to be really tied to an act of war or like a wartime activity. So, for example, if we look at the offense of high treason, it's really you're looking at someone who, quote, seriously harms, imprisons, or restrains the monarch. Right? Don't do that. Levies or prepares to levy war on Canada, or assists an enemy at war with Canada or an armed force against whom the Canadian Armed Forces are engaged in hostilities. So again, like you have to basically be fighting for someone that is effectively fighting the Canadian Armed Forces. Thankfully, we're not there in Alberta. I trust we won't get there. So I think that these offenses will not really go. And even if we look at the normal treason charge, you're looking at disclosing without authorization to a foreign military, basically scientific evidence that can be used for purposes prejudicial to the safety or defense of Canada. So, if you're leaking military secrets to, I don't know, a country we're fighting with, that's also technically treason. But again, so just saying that, you don't want to be a part of Canada anymore, well, personally, I don't like that very much, but it really doesn't match what's actually on the books.
And so when Premier Eby uses a word like this and describes it as old-fashioned, that's an understatement considering the history that you've just described to us.
Yeah, it's definitely an understatement legally. It's so like, and I was debating with people because, I was quoted in the newspaper saying, okay, guys, this is treason. You might not, that doesn't mean, look, there's a lot of things that below treason that are also bad that we don't have to like. And then, and someone, a good friend of mine who's out on the West Coast, a Professor Stuart Press, he said, what Eby's doing is he's trying to use moral clarity at a time of crisis. And I said, I said, that's fine. That's your interpretation. Just, don't expect the people who are in Alberta to be put on treason charge. There is, however, I think a more interesting idea here, and I don't mean to interrupt or anything, but like if, which is the question of foreign influence and foreign interference. So I don't know if you want to talk about that.
I absolutely do, because that's where I find this really interesting. It's one thing because there have been so many comparisons, Stephanie, made to Quebec, for example, and the referendums we have gone through with Quebec separation or the possibility thereof. In this case, it is not just a conversation about Alberta separation, the possibility of that, but a group that has gone to a foreign government to seek some sort of assistance to that end.
Yeah, exactly. So this is where things might be getting a little bit more dicey. So if we look at the way the government and, like just over a year ago, we had the foreign interference inquiry. Remember that? It feels like 27 years ago. But the way the government tends to think about these things is really two categories. The first one is that you're going to have your foreign influence, and the other one is your foreign interference. So foreign interference is the bad one, right? That's where you really have a couple of things happening, which is that you have a group that is looking to basically clandestinely, so behind the scenes or covertly, try to influence politics that are that with regards to Canada and are against Canadian interests, right? So that is that. There's another category here which is also threatening to harm a person. But for now, let's just look at like the actual influence operations. That is interesting. Where I think that sits right now is what I would call foreign influence. And foreign influence is slightly different in the sense that the covert element isn't there. It's basically if the State Department is like, yes, we're having these meetings, and, this group, yes, I think it's the Alberta Prosperity Project and the other kind of pro-separatist forces, which is a weird thing to say. But if they're, actively saying, yes, we're having these meetings, that's not covert, right? You're saying the quiet part out loud. That's not covert. So I think what you're then looking at is foreign influence, which isn't necessarily criminal in the sense of foreign influence, but actually then may start having an impact on Canadian election law, right? Because there's certain rules around financing and support and things like that from third parties. That's where this may be becoming a problem. So I think to the extent that, we're having these conversations. I mean, there could be a foreign influence element that we should look into that. It also doesn't have to be a state, right? If you looked at the convoy protests in 2022 that were up here in Ottawa and in other parts of the country, about 50% of the donations came from the United States, right? And as a result of that, we do know that this is happening. But again, it wasn't exactly covert. There were actively Americans who were saying, yes, we have to support this. Yes, we have to fund this. But that doesn't mean, it's so maybe it's not foreign interference, but it's definitely a kind of foreign influence, which means politically we can say, this is something we really don't like. And on top of that, there may be, in the context of a referendum, they are going to have to follow election law, and this could potentially have implications there. So that was a bit of a rant, but you kind of have to parse out the issues.
No, for sure. And it's very instructive to understand those aspects of this. And just thinking on something you said initially, Stephanie, that it doesn't necessarily have to be treasonous or reach the level of treason for it to be something that you dislike, as other Canadians may very well feel that way. They don't like the idea that Alberta, much like Quebec has in the past, is now talking about separation. And I guess if nothing else, this puts the issue on the front burner.
Yeah, it does. I mean, these movements have existed in Alberta since the 1970s. Like, you could definitely trace them back. Like, that's not, it's just, in an era of social media, these things tend to take speed, right? And I lived in the UK, for 10 years. And I saw the Brexit movement go from these kind of fringe guys to eventually successfully getting the UK out of the EU. So I take this issue very seriously, right? Just because this is happening. And I do worry. I don't think it's a good thing if the State Department, if senior U.S. officials are actively meeting with people for the purpose of breaking up the country. I think this is actually a very bad thing. Is it treason? No. Is it in a legal sense? Is it foreign interference in a legal sense? No, but I mean, like I said, there's a lot of bad that goes in between this, and there may also be some legal issues that are being raised here that potentially could be looked at as well. So I think this is all important things to keep in mind. But we're going to have a kind of a reckoning here. Is this a movement that we want to talk about with empathy, with trying to convince people that, okay, yeah, you're angry and we get that, but let's hash it out. Let's don't go through with the divorce. Or is this something that, we should be condemning in terms of using language like treason? I'm not going to offer an opinion on that because I'm not sure I'm smart enough, but it is, I think, something that is important to think about when we are dealing with these kinds of movements.
Great to get your perspective on the show. Stephanie, thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
Stephanie Carvin is an assistant professor of international relations at Carleton University. As she mentioned, also a former national security analyst. Meeting the legal definition, the bar for treason? No. But is there a lot in there to not like? Yes. Not the least of which, from where I'm sitting, is the willingness of officials of a foreign government, which is right next door, by the way, to engage in these conversations with a group of people who would like to break up the country that we know it, or that we know today as Canada. I have serious problems with this, serious problems. And I certainly think, again, not being an expert by any means, and I would defer to not only Stephanie Carvin's expertise, but her desire to maybe tamp down the rhetoric a little bit here and have a conversation with those who wish to separate, those Albertans who wish to separate, with some level of empathy. But I find this deeply concerning that a foreign government, U.S. or otherwise, a foreign government's a foreign government, would willingly engage in these conversations with folks who would be interested in breaking up Canada. I've got a serious problem with that. What about you? treason? Does it fall short of treason? Do you have any problem with the Alberta separatist movement? Phone lines are always open to get your feedback on the issues of the day. We'll get to your calls right after this on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
You're looking at disclosing without authorization to a foreign military, basically scientific evidence that can be used for purposes prejudicial to the safety or defense of Canada. So, if you're leaking military secrets to, a country we're fighting with, that's also technically treason. But again, so just saying that, you don't want to be a part of Canada anymore, well, personally, I don't like that very much, but it really doesn't match what's actually on the books.
An outdated, archaic term with an outdated and archaic definition. Maybe time to update it for modern times. Falling short of treason, perhaps. A group of Alberta separatists who have visited, not covertly at all, officials in the United States to seek financial assistance in their bid to separate from Canada. So a foreign government is willingly engaging in conversation, taking meetings about the prospect of breaking up the country next door. I have serious problems with that. BC Premier David Eby calls it treasonous behavior. What say you? That was Stephanie Carvin, by the way, an associate professor of international relations at Carleton University. We'll go to the phones. Doug, good morning.
Good morning, Mike. We are a passionate lot, are we not?
I beg your pardon?
We are a passionate lot, are we not?
We are indeed. Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I listened to your cohort last week, Rob Snow, and it almost seems like everybody that calls that show about this subject is all from Alberta. Although one gentleman from down east called, and he went way over the top about taking them out and hanging a bunch of them. And it falls short of treason as far as it's not treason, unethical, especially because it's being done undercover. I have a bigger problem with the officials from the White House that didn't tell them to get lost. That they should not be engaging in this until they have authorization from a referendum that says, let's do this.
You know what, Doug? That's a really interesting way to look at it. And again, this is where I take the greatest issue, and that is willingly engaging in these conversations at this point in the movement here in Canada. Mike, good morning. What say you?
Oh, Michael, there's a lot of things to unpack here. First thing, I think it's a bit rich with Mr. Eby, the Premier of BC, because by him not allowing Alberta to sell their oil through BC and putting up all sorts of obstacles, he is contributing to the resentment that Albertans feel. The other thing on this one here, I do believe it's treason, Michael, and because in some countries, if another country went and said, we're going to help you break away from the other country, that would be considered an act of war. And I disagree with the last caller, right? Even if they did become a legitimate party or whatever, have a referendum, I don't think the United States or any foreign country should be interfering in our internal affairs like they say for a lot of other countries. And I'm very disappointed in our Prime Minister for not taking a much stronger response to this let's say, unfortunate act. And I can use a lot stronger words, but I'd be kicked off the radio.
All right, Mike, thanks for that. And thanks for not using the stronger words. Premier Eby chose a strong word, treason. Jersey Bill, good morning.
Yeah, this reminds me of what happened in the U.S., where the Lincoln and the Northerners said the Constitution meant this union cannot be broken, and the Confederates, they wanted to be a confederation. They had problems with that from the beginning because as a confederation, it was more like a loose alliance of the different states that adhered to it, and it was very difficult for the Confederacy, even during that war, to really cause everybody to be under a central rule. And of course, when Canada started toward its move toward independence, it was a confederation. And of course, we know that Labrador and Newfoundland decided not to join it. And who knows, if the Charlottetown Conference wasn't successful, maybe you would have had a separate maritime country, a Quebec and an Ontario, which were all independent. Now, I think that would have made it easier for the U.S. to intervene in these various different places, but it might also have created a situation where Quebec developed close ties to France, and Ontario and the Maritimes would have been forced to continue to have very close ties to Great Britain in order not to be overtaken by the U.S. But that's the way the country was, and that's, when you think about it, the referendums in Quebec and now the potential referendum in Alberta, that's where it comes from, this idea of confederation rather than a federal union.
Billy, appreciate the call and your perspective on that as well. We'll get another one in before the news update. Dave, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Mike. How are you?
Good, thanks.
So first of all, people are comparing Alberta to Quebec when they were talking about separating. If Quebec had separated when they did, the province would have, as a country, would have gone belly up. No armed forces, no currency, no nothing. Alberta's in a much better condition. I think they could pull it off. But the bigger question is, why hasn't the federal government done more to listen to Alberta and to try to keep the country together? I mean, Mark and his liberal loony bin there, they just seem to be quiet on this. If Carney really cared about Canada like he claims he does, he would be sitting at the table, getting the Americans out there and sitting at the table with Alberta and saying, hey, let's work together. Let's get your oil out of your province.
Well, but you don't think that memorandum of understanding signed with Premier Smith isn't a step in that direction, Dave?
I don't know. I mean, Carney is not. I don't think he's out for the best interest of Canada. So I don't think he really has sure, he sends a memorandum, but sit down at the table. Go to Alberta, sit down with them, and figure out how we can keep the country together. I mean, I love Canada. I'm 63. I've been here my entire life. I love the country. I don't like where it's going. So we need cooler heads at the table. We need smarter heads at the table to keep this country together before we end up pieces of a broken, what used to be a great country.
Yeah, and listen, I hear where you're coming from on that, and I can certainly understand the frustration. I don't know that we can lay this all at the feet of the current Liberal government. I think the previous 10 years had a hell of a lot to do with this disaffection, particularly out west. But as our guest, Stephanie Carvin from Carleton University, pointed out, and if we consider further our history, this goes back 50, almost 60 years now, right? So it can't all be Prime Minister Carney's fault. Although, if we want to show meaningful steps towards some sort of reconciliation with Western separatist ideals, then perhaps getting to that table, as Dave suggests, is the way to go. I always find it interesting to have these conversations from our comfortable place here in the center of the universe in southern Ontario. We can only guess by listening how Albertans really feel. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. The month of February is Black History Month, and we kicked it off with a community event yesterday at the Ken Sealing Museum. That event hosted by the Caribbean Canadian Association of Waterloo Region. Its executive director, Devin Harnarain, joins me on the show this morning. Devin, good morning.
Good morning. It's great to be here, especially as we kick off Black History Month in our community.
Yeah, it is terrific to have you here for that very reason, to talk about the month-long celebration and what it is that we are marking. Can we start with the event yesterday? I know it's 24 hours in the past now, but what was the point and how did the community event at the Ken Sealing Museum yesterday go?
Yeah, so yesterday we hosted a Black History Month community celebration at the Ken Sealing Museum. And we actually welcomed well over 390 people. The space was full of energy, families, youth, elders all together. And we actually had some really powerful speakers, like the Honorable Dr. Jean Augustine, who is the pioneer for Black History Month in Canada, and then local author Antonio Michael Dowling. And it really set the tone for Black History Month about reflection, pride, and taking action as a community.
How can we do that through this month, Devin? Take pride as a community, spend some time reflecting.
That's a really great question. And I think we can do that by creating spaces where, people can learn about Black history, feel proud of who they are, and then turn that pride into action. So that means, investing in education, mentoring young people, and supporting community programs that really respond to the needs.
I know that the Caribbean Canadian Association of Waterloo Region has set a goal of raising $50,000 through this month. How do you intend to do that, and where will the money go?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it is going to be through community support and, getting local donations and the community involved. And our goal is about, that 50,000 is about removing some barriers and creating opportunities. So, we're raising funds through community donations, partnerships, and events throughout February. And every dollar is going to go towards our scholarship program and youth mentorship and programs that support Black families year-round in our community.
What other events can we expect through the month of February, Devin?
Yeah, so a lot of local partners are going to do events throughout the community. And I know for us as an organization, we're going to be doing a speaker series throughout the month that the community can attend at our office space downtown Kitchener at the SDG building. And so more information and confirmation of those events will be available via our social media.
Why is it important that we take the time, we spend this month celebrating and reflecting on Black history?
It's really important, I think, especially in a Canadian context, to understand that change doesn't happen by accident, right? We have to reflect to better understand what are the current barriers that still exist today, and what are some of the things or actions that we can take to address those. So, not just have good intentions, but actions that come with it as well.
I'm glad you made reference to those barriers that still exist today, because I often get the sense that for some, they either think those barriers no longer exist or they just don't think about them at all anymore. Can you share with us what some of those barriers are that we're still working to overcome today?
Yeah, so some of those barriers that exist include unequal access to education. And I think for even a lot of youth, we're recognizing limited, mentorship opportunities or representation. Yesterday, Dr. Jean Augustine, in her speech, she really talked about economic challenges and systemic biases that still affect opportunities in terms of access to, for example, for entrepreneurs to get capital in the Black realm. And I think we also see the importance of the government addressing some of it with the announcement of the Black Entrepreneurship Program, right, creating pathways. But yeah, I think there's still a lot of opportunities to collaborate and work together to remove those barriers.
How would you say we are doing here in the region of Waterloo, Devin, at removing these barriers, overcoming these obstacles?
Well, I would say both of the school boards actually do a really great job with their Black Brilliance clubs and organizations that give students opportunities and spaces to discuss and talk about some of these issues. And I think also as a region, there's growing awareness and strong community organizations and more willingness to have conversations. And I think that opens up a lot more opportunities, especially at a local level. And then I think we're even seeing it, having someone like Colleen James be on region, being a counselor and being an advocate really shows that there are opportunities and spaces for people of color within the region.
I appreciate you making time for the conversation today. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you.
That's Devin Harnarain, the Executive Director of the Caribbean Canadian Association of Waterloo Region. They held an event yesterday at the Ken Sealing Museum on Homer Watson, honoring the past, empowering the future. It was a community celebration, well attended by a cross-section of community members to mark the beginning of this month of reflection and conversation around overcoming those obstacles that absolutely still exist, those barriers that we aim to continue breaking down. The Caribbean Canadian Association of Waterloo Region is hoping to raise $50,000 throughout this month, which will support students who are pursuing post-secondary education through scholarships and education assistance. It will deliver community-based programming that promotes cultural pride, leadership, and belonging, and it will strengthen long-term community supports that respond to real needs identified by the community. And you heard Devin make reference to Regional Councillor Colleen James as somebody who is representative of our Black community on a local council. It's this whole idea of if you can see it, you can be it. We talk about that in many walks of life now, and that is important representation. Yesterday, the KW Titans at their game at the Memorial Auditorium against Lake Erie celebrated Black History Month as they do every year. The Titans get behind that with a celebration as part of their game day on a game in February, near the beginning of February, and it just worked out that it was on the beginning, February the 1st, yesterday, Black History Month, so the KW Titans could celebrate. And as you heard during All News Mornings today with Christine Clark and Mark Douglas, you will see that Black History Month bus from Grand River Transit on our road throughout the month, just to remind us of the importance of the reflection and the celebration of Black history in our community throughout the month of February. We're going to take a break. When we come back, that salt shortage that we've been talking so much about, where again is the largest salt mine in the world? And if we know where it is, why is it so hard to get salt here? Plus, your daily reminder that not everybody is a jackwagon as we continue the Mike Farwell Show this morning. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. We were talking earlier in the show, about an hour ago, about the poor fella in Kitchener who had the city come and clear his sidewalk at, of course, the expense of the homeowner, because that's how it works. And Sean sends me an email to Mike at 570news.com and says, Mike, I walk a couple of kilometers to the Odd every Friday night from where I park. Hey, listen, Sean, I know a lot of fans of Kitchener Rangers games feel that pain. With all that parking, like if you ever walk through the Kitchener Memorial Auditorium complex and you see all of the parking, including the lot that extends all the way out to the skate park, et cetera, you'd wonder how on earth we end up in a situation where there are more vehicles than spaces. But yes, you end up parking quite a distance away, and maybe you do that too so you can walk and not have to wait in traffic afterwards. Anyway, Sean's email goes on to say that couple of kilometers he walks every Friday night to the Odd, he sees 0% of sidewalks that are down to the bare cement. So this person who had his sidewalk cleaned by the city at now his own expense is the victim of a Karen or a Kent, says Sean. You are dead wrong on this. Sean, I appreciate the email and all of the feedback. Yes, I'm kind of taking it on the chin for my contention that in this case of the homeowner whose walk was cleared by the city, and then, of course, the city leaves that bill behind. I get it, but you get the warning and you get the time to get it clear, and then only then will the city come out and do the job that apparently you were not doing up to standard yourself. I hear where Sean's coming from, though, because as a daily walker, I encounter very few sidewalks right down to the bare pavement. And in a winter like this, I would like to think we could extend some grace here to everybody involved, just like cities have been asking us to extend them the grace for the time it's taking to get streets plowed, etc., the salt shortage and all of those other things. I get it. But the rules is the rules. And I don't disagree that this poor fella is the victim of somebody who is the, in Sean's words, the Karen or the Kent, and complaining about this. It's a complaint-based system, isn't it? And why his house gets singled out next to the other houses where perhaps the snow is equally uncleared on the sidewalk? Great question. Great question. Because the Karen or the Kent is upset with this particular homeowner. Related to that, let's go back to this salt shortage, shall we? And some people are now saying Ontario Premier Doug Ford needs to step up and do something for us here in the province. And you know, I don't think I disagree entirely with that. Remember, this is the same premier who made headlines by design a few years ago by stopping in his truck with his shovel to help dig people out on a particularly snowy morning. And if you know, and I'm sure you do because we live so close to it, we're about 90 minutes away from the town of Goderich, which just so happens to be home to the world's largest underground salt mine right there in Goderich. And even though we have that ample supply, the world's largest mine right here in Ontario, municipalities across this province are struggling with a salt shortage. And yet, if you were to pay attention to where the salt goes that comes out of the mine, oh, wait a minute. It's owned, the mine is, by Compass Minerals, which is an American company. And on any given day, you'll see large ships at the port loading up on Canadian salt bound for market in the United States. All of this happening right beneath our noses while we struggle through the salt shortage here in Ontario. How can this be that we have the shortage in Ontario and the very mine that is sending salt to American markets is right here in the province where we are experiencing this shortage? A lot of folks are talking about the supply chain issues that lead to this. But the reality is, if you are a municipality that, say, uses an average of 1,000 tons of salt a year, and that's what you ordered again this year because that's your average, and now it just turned to February and we've had such a brutal winter, maybe your salt supply is already out. You go looking for more. Sorry, that salt is spoken for. It's being loaded onto a ship and sent to American markets right out of Goderich, right out of a town in the province where municipalities are struggling with this shortage. So some folks are saying, hang on a second here. Premier Ford, where are you in support of Ontario municipalities? Because we're letting this salt be shipped right away from our own borders to serve American markets because it's been a more difficult than average winter. Tough times out there, tough times. Mary is on the phone this morning. Hello, Mary.
Hello, Mike, with the mic. Tell me if I'm wrong. I've never heard that we have to take the snow from the sidewalk down to the cement. I've never heard such much ado about this.
That is the standard set by the city if you read their websites.
Well, when did they set it?
When did they set that standard? I don't know. We've been talking about it for several years for sure.
Well, I didn't know that.
Yeah, that's what they want you to do.
Well, yeah, but I think that's stupid.
Oh, that's okay.
No, but really, if a person can walk, that was the idea of it, not getting down to the cement. And besides which, the cold temperatures we have, salt doesn't do anything. So let's, think about other things.
All right, Mary, we can think about other things. Absolutely. There are some of us, and I will include myself among those some, that take great pride in getting the sidewalk down to the bare pavement. It's not always easy. This year has been particularly difficult. I have used some salt sparingly, but I have used it because it was the only way to get through some of those ice pellets and freezing rain events that we had. But currently, the sidewalk in front of the Farwell house is down to the bare pavement. And I don't think it's dangerous in the state that it's currently in. I've seen a lot of people, too, out while we're walking around chopping up what's there because we've had the weather that allows for that, right? Get some sun, get some dry conditions, and it's a lot of work. I saw a couple of fellows out on Ottawa Street yesterday. Oh, were they getting through a mess? But they were getting through it, chopping it right down to the wood, so to speak. I want to tell you this story about this neighbor, or perhaps more to the point, a neighborhood in Racine County on Tishigan Lake in Wisconsin. It was one person first that was outside his home when he heard a call for help. He calls 911, then he gets out on the lake, Tishigan Lake in Racine County on his paddleboard. This is it's Wisconsin in the winter, okay? But out on his paddleboard he goes because he knows that his end of the lake, you just never know what kind of ice you're going to get. And wouldn't you know, sure enough, somebody had fallen through the ice. So this gentleman, with his paddleboard out on the broken ice, gets some help from neighbors and gets out to the man who had fallen through and was able to help get him back onto the paddleboard and back to safety. Because as he says, this end of the ice changes by the day, and you got to be really careful out there. Eventually, firefighters, because the 911 call was made, were on scene. They were able to get the man to the hospital in stable condition. He had been wearing flotation gear when he went through the ice, and that helped him keep his head above water. So the good neighbors could get together on the paddleboard to get out there and pull him from the frigid waters of Lake Tishigan. Your daily reminder, I like to tell you on this show every day, not everybody is a jackwagon. And if you know somebody who is not, we're always happy to hear those stories. Just drop me an email, mike@570news.com. Going to quickly go to the phones one more time before our news update at 10:30. Good morning, Frank.
Hey, Mike, how are you doing?
Good.
I'd much rather have a little bit of snow on the ground, just so when I take the dogs to walk, the salt does not hurt their feet.
The salt hurts my dog's feet.
Yeah.
I thought you said the salt doesn't hurt your dog's feet.
No, it does. It does.
Yeah, mine too.
I'd much rather have some snow on the ground than bare concrete for the salt bugging their paws.
Well, no, I get that part. I do, and I want Rosie to have a pleasant walk too. But like I said earlier, I can't get behind this idea that a sidewalk with some snow on it is somehow safer or provides better traction than bare pavement. Bare pavement's bare pavement. I think that's the standard for a reason. But I guess everybody has a different standard they'd like. But what the city asks for is bare pavement. This is the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Today is not just Groundhog Day. It's the first Monday in the month of February, and on the first Monday of every month at 10:30, we are joined by Kim Wilhelm, CEO at the Food Bank of Waterloo Region, to talk about food inflation, food insecurity, and the need in our community. As always, Kim, thank you for making the time. Good morning.
Good morning. And it's just always so great to be able to start my month with you, Mike.
I enjoy it too. And these are really important and ongoing conversations, not only the work that you do at the food bank, but it always seems to have a connection to what's going on in the news. For example, the announcement just last week by Prime Minister Carney about Canada Groceries and Essentials benefit, which is to provide some direct financial support, right? To help low and modest income Canadians. So what are we looking at here in the region of Waterloo? What could this benefit mean for folks here?
We're hearing every day, Mike, from individuals and families right across our community whose budgets are being pushed to the breaking point by the rising cost of groceries, rent, and other basic essentials. And even small increases can have a huge impact on an individual's budget. Last month, if you recall, I mentioned that food prices will be going up another $1,000 for families this year. And for families who are already living paycheck to paycheck, that kind of increase isn't just challenging, but it's devastating. And the people who are turning to food assistance are already doing everything they can to make ends meet. So in Waterloo Region, this benefit could mean the difference between a family stretching groceries through the month or showing up at a food bank because there's simply nothing left. And that's why we welcome the proposed Canada Groceries and Essentials benefit, Mike. If it's passed this spring, it's expected to provide support to more than 12 million people right across the country.
12 million across the country. Do we know, Kim, how many families or individuals that will benefit here in the region?
Well, unfortunately, Statistics Canada doesn't provide an official count of GST credit recipients right here in Waterloo Region. But what I can share is nearly 73,000 people in our community are accessing food support every year here in Waterloo Region. And that number just shows how widespread affordability crisis is here. So these neighbors who are working, they could be raising families, living on fixed incomes, and simply finding that the cost of groceries and other essentials keeps outpacing what they can afford.
You're on the front lines of this, you and the team at the Food Bank of Waterloo Region. So when you consider a benefit like this, Kim, is it going far enough to help folks with that sticker shock they seem to be experiencing at the grocery store?
It's a fair question, and we understand that concern in so many ways that people are facing right now. And the cost of groceries, as I mentioned, is affecting a lot of Canadians. And this benefit, truthfully, it won't reach everyone who's feeling the pinch. It also won't solve the broader affordability challenge that people are facing. So that said, there are households with the lowest income that are going to be supported, and it will make a true difference right now. When you're choosing between groceries, rent, utilities, really modest relief, financial relief can make a huge difference. So direct financial support like this matters because it gives people choice and control, which is so important. Something everyone deserves when they're trying to feed a family.
We know that this kind of benefit is the result of advocacy. What has that advocacy looked like to get us here?
Well, for more than 2 years, food banks across the country, along with our provincial partners at Feed Ontario and Food Banks Canada, have been calling on the federal government to take action against food costs. And we've been clear that people need support right now, even as longer-term solutions are being developed. Last week's announcement, along with the commitments like the National Food Security Strategy, reflects what can happen when collective voices come together to push for action. And while this benefit won't solve food insecurity, like I said, on its own, it can ease some of the pressure that people are facing as we, because that immediate relief matters so much.
So what's next, Kim? What else can we do to address food insecurity in our communities?
Well, the food bank, along with our partners, will be continuing to push for long-term strategies. Policies such as modernizing employment insurance, improving adequacy of the Canadian disability benefit, better supports for low-income workers, and continue to push for strategies for affordable housing. You know, for too many people caught in unstable, low-paying jobs, relying on limited employment insurance after a layoff, or barely getting by on an inadequate disability or social assistance benefit, it's not good enough. It really isn't good enough. And while this benefit's going to help people breathe, it doesn't fix the systems that made it a necessity.
And that just goes to show how interconnected all of this is, right? You're talking about housing as one part of food insecurity here.
It is. I mean, when we know that housing can often take all of an individual's income, what's left? The system, it truthfully is broken right now, Mike. And so when we know that food, shelter, those are key things in an individual's, that they're basic human right. Yet so many people, not only in Waterloo Region, but right across the country, can't afford those basic necessities.
How can the community rise to the challenge, Kim? What can we do to help out in this push for change?
The biggest thing that people can do is stay engaged and keep these issues front and center. Talk about it, share information, and help break down the stigma around needing food support. It's not easy for someone to admit that they need help. It really isn't. And I would say that sometimes we don't make it easy for someone to admit that amongst their peers. Hunger isn't caused by a lack of generosity. It's caused by gaps in our social systems. Community supports matter, but so does political will. So, of course, supporting local food banks like the Food Bank of Waterloo Region through donations, volunteering, or speaking out really helps meet urgent needs today, while we continue to push as a community, as a network, for long-term change.
The website is thefoodbank.ca. You'll learn all kinds of things about the work that is being done in our community, how you can volunteer. You can make donations right there as well. As always, Kim, appreciate these conversations because, as I said at the outset, they're always so relevant. This is an ongoing issue in our community, and we'll keep up the work on the advocacy and support side, and I know you and the team at the Food Bank will keep doing the work that you're doing. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Kim Wilhelm is the CEO at the Food Bank of Waterloo Region. She joins us on the first Monday of every month at 10:30 to talk about food insecurity in our community, how the Food Bank is helping to fill gaps, and how we can support that work. Again, visit the website anytime, thefoodbank.ca. This is the Mike Farwell Show on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Well, it comes around once a term for sure for our municipal politicians. And every time it comes around, the same reaction occurs, right? How dare those people vote themselves a raise? In fairness, they do not vote themselves a raise. Oftentimes, this is a recommendation from a committee that determines how councils are being paid and where they should be, if there should be an increase. And then the council will vote on the acceptance of the report and then cast the vote that would apply to the next term of council. So not voting themselves an immediate raise. However, should they be reelected, they will then obtain that higher salary. And we know, like, I've got a couple of issues with it. One is of course, incumbency, particularly in municipal politics, makes getting reelected much easier than being the newcomer that tries to beat an incumbent. So in some ways, you could say they are voting themselves a raise. It's just not an immediate raise. And then there's this other issue that I have, and that is the benchmarking that these committees usually do, whereby they'll look at this municipality and that municipality and determine, where you fit in, where your municipality fits into that. But what you end up with basically is the ladder effect, right? Because if you are being underpaid compared to municipality X or Y, then they will say, okay, well, you should be bumped up. And then when municipality X or Y comes around for their chance at a new possible compensation model, they'll look at your council and say, well, now they're making this, so we should step up over that. And it's just this continual climb up the proverbial ladder. And at the end of it all, who gets left on the hook paying for it? Well, that would be us, right? When they take our property taxes, or when they apply our property taxes, it funds in part those salaries, not just for staff, but for councillors and the mayor as well. Worth noting in this context that in Wilmot, as a cost-saving measure in this year's budget, they are not taking councillor and mayoral salary increases in Wilmot. So all of this is to remind you that we recently went through it in Waterloo. In Cambridge, I told you last week about the report that showed that councillors were underpaid, according to the report, by about $3,600 a piece, but the mayor was apparently overpaid by about $11,000. Now the conversation is coming to Guelph, and council will consider a report that recommends a 10% pay increase for the mayor, which will take the salary to more than $187,000 in Guelph. Meantime, councillors would be in line for a 33% increase, taking their pay to a whopping $70,200. Remember, this is considered a part-time job for councillors. And the mayor of Guelph has already said he'll be voting against the report that suggests these raises. But again, I already outlined some of the concerns that I have. If you have fallen behind so far that you need a 33% makeup or catch up, something ain't right. And quite frankly, in this economy, it's awfully hard for the tax-paying public to stomach the increase for 33%. Raise your hand if you got 33% by way of an increase from your employer. But don't worry, it only applies to the next term of Guelph Council. Hey, if you're thinking of running for City Council, and why not make more than $70,000 for the quote-unquote part-time job in Guelph, the Association of Municipalities of Ontario is offering a free workshop to anyone who would like to learn the ropes. The association says the series provides a, quote, supportive, skills-focused environment to strengthen your leadership foundation and reconnect with the values that guide public service. The sessions run from February through May. This little tidbit might surprise you. It certainly did me. According to a new poll, Premier Ford may not have a lot of company in his opposition to Canada's New Deal with China that will see 50,000 electric vehicles imported here. The survey found that 60% of Ontarians support the EV deal, compared to 34% who are opposed. Now, this support holds also across all regions of the province. However, the deal was far less popular among progressive conservative supporters, who were 61% opposed to 34% in support. Likewise, a majority of Ontarians disagreed with the Premier's criticism that it was a, quote, lopsided deal that risks Ontario's auto jobs and cuts access to the U.S. market, while the majority agreed with the federal government's messaging about diversifying trade away from the U.S., getting Chinese car makers to invest in setting up factories in Canada that would employ Canadian workers to make cars for domestic use and export markets other than the United States. I would have thought that more people would have been on Doug Ford's side in this. But nope, 60% of Ontarians, according to this poll, support the EV deal with China. And I think what that speaks to is our rather keen interest in owning an electric automobile, but one that is far less expensive than those that are currently available on the market, right? How many times have we talked about EVs on this show? And there remains the concern around EVs operating in this kind of weather. For what it's worth, I've seen several on the road recently, and they seem to be doing okay. We talk about that range anxiety, right? What if we're here, there, or the other place, and we can't get the charge that we need? I still can't get over, and again, I'm thinking about this in terms of a road trip. If you're just bombing around town, that's one thing. But I can't get over this idea that you're going to be taking a road trip somewhere and you have to stop to charge up. And that stop, if you stop for gas and a coffee now, it takes you 10 minutes tops, depending on the line maybe at the coffee shop. I can't get over the idea that it takes you 45 minutes to an hour to fully charge your vehicle. That takes time out of your road trip, doesn't it? That's going to ruin the ETA a little bit. Anyway, this poll suggests to me that we here in Ontario are rather interested in an electric vehicle as long as we can get it at a lower price point. And that's always been one of my bugaboos about it, right? I'm all for doing the best that I can for the environment, but the entry price for the EV market is still a little high for my parsimonious liking. And yes, parsimonious is my $10 word for cheap. I am as cheap as the day is long. I'm still not sure I'm going to be investing in one of those lower-priced Chinese-made electric vehicles when they arrive here, but I guess we'll see what the price point is and where I'm at in my automobile buying life. And finally, one more story to fill you in on, and it may not have been the best choice, for a man in Puslinch who was found at the scene of a single vehicle crash when police responded to the scene. They found the man's car in a ditch and they suspected that the driver was impaired. He refused a breathalyzer and then allegedly tried to bribe an officer. So they suspect he's drunk. It's a single vehicle accident, vehicles in a ditch. Clearly, the attempt to bribe an officer is a poor decision. It proves once again that you can run from the cops, but you certainly cannot hide. And I know it sounds unbelievable, but this man really did engage in such whiskey business. The bribe was also a fail because all the man had in his pocket was a bottle opener. There you go. A little bit of your Farwell report for this Monday morning. Mondays mean a number of other things, including Drewe's Views. David Drewe joins us every Monday morning at 11:30 to share his unique perspective on things, including, of course, a couple of big conservative conventions this weekend, right? And here in Ontario, Premier Doug Ford says he's going to run for the PC party again in the next provincial election, meaning he could have 4 terms as premier. And he also decided to let the media into the convention. And then there was Pierre Poilievre, an 87% vote of support for the leader of the federal Conservatives. So Conservatives federally think Pierre Poilievre is the man to lead them into the next federal election. So we'll get David Drewe's perspective on that when he joins us just over 30 minutes from now. And after this update from the 570 News Center, something we do every Monday morning at 11, is This Week in Music History with our good friend and musicologist Brian Allison. Speaking of music, this week on All Request Friday, in honor of Black History Month, we are taking our loyal listener Clinton's suggestion and making it Black artists for All Request Friday this Friday. So send in your requests by email to mike@570news.com or give Jen a call. She's answering the phones on the other side of the glass today, and she'll make note of your request. Black artists for this Friday, All Request Friday on the show. This Week in Music History comes up next on The Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
When I was a little bitty boy, my grandmother bought me a cute little toy. Silver my ding-a-ling-a-ling, oh, my ding-a-ling, my ding-a-ling. I want to play with my ding-a-ling, my ding-a-ling, my ding-a-ling. I want to play with my ding-a-ling.
An absolute classic from Chuck Berry, but I wonder how many years we would have to go back in radio history to get in trouble for playing such a song on a show such as this. We're very above board here at 570 News Radio, and we don't play with our ding-a-lings, whether Chuck Berry sings about them or not. But it is the song of choice to begin this week in music history, our regular Monday morning 11 a.m. segment with our good friend and musicologist, Brian Allison. Don't forget, Brian operates a Facebook page of the same name, This Week in Music History, and you'll get these tidbits and more each and every week there as Brian joins us on the phone. Good morning, Brian.
Hi, Mike.
Let's start with the song that started it. Come On, Chuck Berry, and that was his first number one in the UK this week in 1972.
Isn't that hard to believe?
Yes, very hard.
Not just the year 1972, but it was Chuck Berry's first number one single. So, yeah, Chuck had obviously been around for many, many years. He was one of the archetypes of rock and roll back in the 50s, had all these great hits, Maybelline, Rock and Roll, Roll Over Beethoven, you got Johnny Be Good, Sweet Little 16, No Particular Place to Go, all great songs. None of them hit number one, which I always thought was a bit unusual. And Chuck had to wait till 1972. He recorded this live version of a song that he'd been playing for 20 years, My Ding-a-Ling, and it went right to the top of the charts in the UK. There was quite a bit of resistance because of the innuendo-laden lyrics, but it hit number one nonetheless and became a big hit for Chuck Berry, who, I know we've talked about it before, has a connection to our very own hometown of Kitchener.
Yeah, it was a great story that was written in the Waterloo Region Record not too long ago. We had the author of the story in the studio to talk about it. Really interesting connections. But back to the song, Brian. I mean, first of all, I think that the controversy surrounding the innuendo-laden lyrics might have led to its rapid ascension to number one.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
For sure. I mean, that that's been the way of censorship forever. When the PMRC came in the 80s and started slapping those explicit lyric labels on the front of record albums, which ones do you think started selling the most copies? So they really didn't do anybody, themselves any favors, but they certainly helped the artist out. And it was no different for Chuck Berry when people started saying, oh, you can't say these things on the radio, then people are like, well, I'm going to go out and buy that song then.
I happened to catch a little bit of Back to the Future when I was flipping channels over the weekend, and it was the scene where Marty McFly, played by Michael J. Fox, is on stage playing Johnny Be Good, and then Marvin Berry, who was leading the band that was playing at the Enchantment Under the Sea dance, called his cousin Chuck, I think it is your cousin,
his cousin.
Marvin Berry. This is the new sound you're looking for, and Johnny Be Good never became a number one. Go figure.
It's just bizarre. On either side of the Atlantic, like even in the USA, Chuck didn't have any of those songs hit number one. So it's kind of unusual that he had to wait till 1972. But he got a number one, so that's great.
There you go. Okay, let's stay in the 1970s, Brian. And it was actually this day in 1974 that the Carpenters began a 4-week run at number one.
They did, with their greatest hits album, which was called The Singles, 1969 to 1973, and it went right to the top of the charts. Featured 12 previous released hits and the U.S. number one song, Top of the World, which would return to the top of the charts on 3 other occasions. And the Carpenters, what can you say about them? They went on to sell 100 million albums worldwide. They were one of the biggest pop acts of the 70s, and just a great act, some great songwriting, and of course that amazing voice with Karen Carpenter. Some interesting trivia, with that voice that had it was just such an incredibly clear voice. John Lennon actually once said that Karen Carpenter had the best voice in popular music, which I can't argue with him on. It's hard to believe, though, Karen Carpenter's first love was not singing. She was originally the drummer for the band. She was the drummer in her brother Richard's band, and when the Carpenters started to earn worldwide fame, she was actually still sitting behind the kit. If you see early performances of the Carpenters in the early 70s, Karen's still performing from behind a drum kit and singing. In fact, in 1975, she was voted the #1 pop drummer by a poll in Playboy magazine. But the band's management really pushed for her to step out from behind the drum kit and be a traditional lead singer. And she did that very reluctantly. She didn't want to. She didn't want to be a lead singer for the band, but she just had this beautiful voice and she had good stage presence, and they said, you know what, you need not to be a drummer so much anymore. Most of her live performances right until the end did include a bit where she would get behind the kit and play some drums, and people were always blown away by how incredibly good she was.
Well, I'm glad management got that one right, because she absolutely, we deserved to hear that voice, didn't we?
Well, I think we were going to hear the voice no matter what, but it was, they just didn't feel that it was proper in the 70s for, a young lady to be sitting beside a big drum kit and trying to project songs and sing at the same time. So they said, you know what, give up the drums, come out front where everybody can see it. That's gonna be better for the audience. So she did that reluctantly.
All right, one more from the 70s this week in music history. It was this week in 1979 that Blondie came of age, I suppose.
Well, they hit it big.
Yeah.
So, I mean, this was sort of Blondie at their pop top. So they hit #1 with their signature song, Heart of Glass, which became, probably the song that Blondie is best known for. It was written in 1975, years earlier, by Debbie Harry and guitarist Chris Stein. And it was the original track was a much slower version of Heart of Glass. It was actually kind of a reggae-inspired piece, and it was called Once I Had Love. When they were recording their album Parallel Lines in 1978, Mike Chapman, who was the producer of the album, said, we could maybe rework this a little bit, put a modern sort of beat on it, maybe bring it up to a little bit of a disco twist. What do you guys think about that? And the band was kind of like, we don't know if we want to do that. But they went ahead and recorded the song. When it was done, I mean, nobody could argue that it wasn't a great track. And of course, it would go to #1 in the USA. It would go #1 in Canada and become, the greatest song that Blondie ever recorded. They had lots of #1s, but that's the one that they're best remembered for. I think a lot of people forget Blondie began life as a punk band. They were one of the earliest groups to have regular performance at New York's CBGB's, and they cut their teeth in the middle of the blooming New York punk scene. In fact, the band's name, Blondie, was taken from catcalls that Debbie Harry received when walking the mean streets of New York. People would call out, "Hey, Blondie!" They thought, that's a good name for a band. So there you go, Blondie, top of the charts in 1979.
Yeah, so they hit it big for the first time this week in 1979, and then 20 years to the week later, Brian, they're back at #1.
How full circle is that?
Love it.
So 1999, same week, different date, a couple of days different, but the exact same week, exactly 20 years later, Blondie goes back to #1 with the song Maria, and that became their 6th UK #1 single. Again, 20 years to the week after Heart of Glass hit #1, they come back to the #1 spot. And at the same time, in 1999, the amazing Debbie Harry becomes the oldest female lead singer of a band to hit #1 at the UK. She was 54 years old in 1999 when Maria hit the top. So good on Blondie. They got staying power for sure.
Absolutely love it. Brian Allison joins us with these interesting tidbits from music history each and every Monday morning at 11 this week in music history. And wouldn't you know, the Eagles still weren't getting along. Bill Haley makes a little bit of history and news about ABBA turning down how much money? We'll get into those stories as we continue this week in music history with Brian Allison on the Mike Farwell Show this Monday morning, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Every Monday morning at 11, we take a trip down a musical memory lane. This week in music history with our friend and musicologist, Brian Allison. Don't forget the Facebook page. It's the same name, This Week in Music History. You can read these tidbits and so much more because Brian is so passionate about his music. One of the first great rock songs, I thought, Rock Around the Clock from Bill Haley. And Bill Haley was making history this week in 1957, Brian.
Well, he was not only making history, but he was advancing rock and roll in a way that would have a profound impact moving forward. So it was on February 5th, 1957, that Bill Haley arrived on the Queen Elizabeth ocean liner in Southampton, England, where he was about to make history as the first American rock artist, to tour the United Kingdom. And he was greeted as a hero, him and his band, the Comets. There was about 5,000 people, kids waiting for them to get off the boat and greet them. The group kicked off the tour the following day with a show at the Dominion Theatre in London. I mean, it just cannot be overstated how important this tour was for rock and roll. In the audiences, I mean, prior to this tour, the predominant music for young people in the UK was skiffle, and skiffle was kind of a blend of country music and folk music, very homegrown sort of thing. But when Bill Haley came to the UK, all of these kids went to see his tour, and you had people like John Lennon and Paul McCartney. You've got Brian May from Queen. You've got Ray Davies from the Kinks, Rod Stewart, all guys who said, as soon as I saw Bill Haley, that was it. I knew what I was going to do with my life. I was starting a rock and roll band. Graham Nash, to this very day, Graham would be 84 years old. He still carries in his wallet his ticket laminated from that Bill Haley show that he saw in 1957 as a 15-year-old boy that changed his life, that made him say, okay, now I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to be a musician. I'm starting a rock and roll band. So Bill Haley, really an important figure for popular music, because without him, maybe that British invasion doesn't happen in the 60s.
That is absolutely fantastic. I had no idea about that Graham Nash story.
Huge, just huge. Like, I mean, again, this is rock and roll being born in the United Kingdom. This is, because we didn't have social media back in the 50s. In order to understand what rock and roll was about, you had to go and see a show. American records were very rarely making their way across the ocean. So, English kids weren't getting Bill Haley records and records by Chuck Berry. They were hearing it on pirate radio stations, but other than seeing that show live, that was the bullet to the brain for a lot of musicians, future musicians in the United Kingdom.
Okay, this week in 2000, Brian, so what are we talking, 26 years ago this week, ABBA turned down how much money?
Okay, so this story has been circulating for years, and I've been researching it, trying to get the definitive word on it. The word is that, and I did find an interview with Bjorn Ulvaeus, where he confirmed that members of ABBA had turned down an offer from an American and British consortium for $1 billion to reform for a tour. It had to be the 4 original members, and they had to agree to a certain number of dates. But they turned it down. His quote was, "It's a hell of a lot of money to say no to, but we decided it wasn't for us." Wow.
Yeah, I don't know how you turn down $1 billion.
Well, it's not like you're being asked to go out and lay pipe or something. I mean, you're playing music, right?
Right.
This is what you were born to do. This is what you love to do. They decided it wasn't for them. But you know what? It did sort of come full circle. ABBA did reform in 2021 on their own terms. They recorded a studio album, which was Voyage, and then they started the quote-unquote Avatar performance in London. So ABBA Voyage is an experience where you can go and watch ABBA perform as avatars. That show, since 2022, has grossed over $220 million. So they've almost recouped, a good chunk of that $1 billion that they turned down to get back on tour, and they didn't have to get off their couch to do it.
There you go. And finally, this week in 2001, Don Felder fired from the Eagles again?
Yep. the politics of the Eagles has just, it's been a lifelong thing for me following, what this band has gone through. So, 2001, Don Felder was fired from the Eagles again. He would later launch a $50 million lawsuit against drummer Don Henley and guitarist Glenn Frey, alleging wrongful termination and breach of implied, in fact, contract. Henley and Frey would countersue for breach of contract, and it just went into the courts and was battled out. They did settle out of court for an undisclosed amount, but that was the last that they would perform with Don Felder again. And, I've come to believe that over the years that band politics, they go in one of two directions. You've got the band that has a leader, or leaders in this case, and they make all the decisions for the group. You got the Eagles. CCR was famous for this. John Fogerty ruled CCR with an iron fist. You guys do what I tell you, and we'll be, I'll take you to the top type of thing. Direction two is that the band acts as a democracy, where all members make decisions together. You've got a band like U2. Every decision they make as a band, they make as a team, and everybody has to agree before they're going to do something. So I don't know which of those is better. We've had both band styles go to the top. I mean, Don Henley and Glenn Frey clearly were doing something right with, taking the Eagles to the success that they have, and it's worked democracy-wise for U2 to be a great band too. So I'm not sure what the right answer is. I just know that when bands break up, it's almost always the first kind, the one where a couple of members are leading,
well, and
telling everybody what to do.
Henley and Frey also had decent solo careers too, to be fair.
Well, for sure they did.
Yeah.
Absolutely. But you got Don Felder, who wrote arguably their greatest hit in Hotel California, and it became their signature song, so to speak. So he's, got that card to play. But, they would say, well, you wrote one really good song to, 50 that we wrote type of thing. We got it from here. We'll decide what's best for the band. And I think it just becomes a power struggle in a lot of cases where, people want to exert control over the band and don't want to give anything up. So that's what happened. And once again, the Eagles parted ways with Don Felder. And it was too bad.
You mentioned that you've spent so much time researching the history of the inability of these bandmates to get along. Is it just the soap opera of it all that appeals to you so much, Brian? I mean, because you almost have to wonder what could have been with these guys.
Well, and it has been the demise of many, many bands who have just gone down because they couldn't get along. They couldn't, come together and say, look, there's lots of gravy for all of us here. We just need to share and be willing to work together. But, it's like anything political. There's people that are going to lead by, you're going to do what I tell you to do because I know better than you do. And there's others that will lead and say, okay, what does everybody think? How can we move forward and make this, happy for everybody? But with the Eagles, I think it was always more, Felder or Henley and Frey saying, yeah, we got this, guys. Just do what we tell you and things will be fine.
Yeah, hop on the coattails. We'll take you there.
Absolutely, 100%.
Always a lot of fun, Brian. Love these chats. We'll do it again next Monday, okay?
All right, Mike, sounds good.
Brian Allison, our good friend and musicologist, joins us every Monday morning, 11 a.m. for a look back at this week in music history. Remember, there is a Facebook page of the same name. This Week in Music History. I encourage you to follow along. You'll get these tidbits and lots more because Brian is always interested in posting bits and pieces from music history. I'm just thinking back on that Bill Haley story, too, and, essentially taking rock and roll to the UK. Like, I can't imagine a world, because growing up in the 1970s, without rock and roll. Like, where would we have been with it? It's just, it's everywhere now. It's a key part of music, period. And I miss it. I don't know there's enough good rock and roll out there these days, but I digress. But just imagine that the magnitude of that tour all those decades ago, the 5,000 fans that line up just to see Bill Haley and the Comets off as they board that ship. Like, that's how much of a mania there was around this new sound, rock and roll music. Love it. This Week in Music History, every Monday at 11 here on the show. Something else we do every Monday morning, just after the 11:30 news, is have a conversation with our good friend David Drewe and Drewe's Views. Couple of conventions this week. One, during which we learn Doug Ford will run again as the leader of the Ontario PCs to try to be premier for a fourth time. And Pierre Poilievre gets strong support. What do we know? What do we think about these conventions this weekend? We'll get David's thoughts on that and more with Drewe's views coming up on the Mike Farwell Show. This is 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? Has anybody heard from Crazy Dave? I haven't seen hide nor shaggy head of that boy in 4 years. But you'd know him if you met him. Played harmonica like the cat lost his balls. Yep, Crazy Dave. Had a toothy smile as big as my hand. Always chewed on a toothpick or a long blade of grass, drank from the bottle, rolled the worst cigarettes, was impervious to insect bites. It's one of the best damn tree planting highballers east of Prince George.
That is our good friend, David Drewe. Have you ever tree planted east of Prince George or west of it, for that matter?
I have only planted trees in Sudbury.
Okay.
And the neat thing is, when I drive home now, I can actually look around at some of them and go, I remember how ugly that used to be. And it's not as ugly as it used to be. There's trees there. It was just bare rockscape before, and you really didn't believe there was enough soil for these trees to actually take.
I dig that. David Drewe owns Negotiating Change, government relations and stakeholder engagement strategies. And he's also a former Conservative Party staffer, joins us every Monday morning to share his views with us on Drewe's Views. Let's talk conventions, David. One provincially, one federally. Provincially in, well, let's call it Etobicoke, shall we? The other in Calgary. What do you make of this weekend with Doug Ford and Pierre Poilievre?
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing?
Like, you know what I mean? Both parties had a good time, but let's be honest. The only people who are going to be surprised that Doug Ford is running again are the people who were insisting he was going to be replacing Pierre Poilievre.
Yep.
And they were a bunch of jokers from the beginning. And Pierre Poilievre getting 80, let's say an A+, you know, that 88 range. That's an A+ in university, an A. You know, that was all what we expected. Yay, Doug Ford's running again, and Pierre Poilievre's popular among Conservatives. Stop the presses. Like, that's what these conventions were. And can we go on to the real stuff now?
Yeah, no, sure.
No. I don't mean you and I. I just mean, can we, as, like, paying attention to whether or not the media were going to get into this thing, that issue totally went away when Doug Ford announces his re-election. He probably got more coverage announcing his re-election just because he wasn't going to let anybody in at all at first. And yeah, Pierre Poilievre won the audience that we knew he was going to win. For all the hype and the build-up, I feel a little bit let down by both.
Isn't it a little premature on Doug Ford's part? I mean, not surprising in any way, but the next election isn't for another 3 years. Why does he need to announce now that he'll be running again?
Okay, so first of all, okay. Yeah, the last election should be coming due soon too.
Really?
Well, yeah, like the one we had this past spring. Shouldn't it be about happening like next spring or next June?
Yeah, this June, shouldn't it be? It was supposed to be.
You know, maybe we're going to lap it. No, and I'm being utterly sincere. And okay, first of all, I think it's a bit of a joker move. But I have to say that with all this Donald Trump stuff going on, Chinese vehicles coming into the country, etc., as Jean Chrétien would say, he might need a mandate sooner than we thought, because there's a whole lot of change coming, and somebody's going to be getting a kick in the pants on this change. And he might want a mandate to determine who's going to take that kick.
Not again. Just let it run its course, Doug.
I kind of do agree, but I am also very, this has been a continuing theme of me coming on in these past few Mondays, or past many Mondays. I'm kind of pessimistic, and I am very prepared for the fact that real change might be needed, to the point where we are talking about industries disappearing and what is retraining going to look like. Or Is somebody going to be saying we are going to keep this plant open in perpetuity until the Americans, whatever. There's going to be some hard choices coming. And it would not surprise me if we have Marit Stiles demanding an election very soon. I shouldn't say very soon.
Why would she do such a thing?
Because Doug Ford is going to have to make some unpopular decisions sooner or later.
I see. Okay, that's fair. Because that's why I found it so interesting that he would announce his re-election now. There's not a single opponent that offers him any
Well, that's another reason to have an
competition.
election sooner.
Well, I suppose, but I don't see that changing by 2029. I guess it could.
Well, the difference will be him because, you want to get out ahead of the bad news and then have some time for the voters to appreciate the good before you have to go back. So if you know you're going to have to be doing something unpopular, you want to make darn sure it's in year one. And if that means you have to push the reset button to get year one, sometimes you might want to do that.
So does Pierre Poilievre stand a better chance of winning an election 6 months from now or a year and 6 months from now? Because it's not often of late that Conservatives have allowed their leader to run a second time after being unsuccessful the first.
Mm-hmm. It's a novel change.
It is.
I really do like the idea of a leader getting a second chance because to me, nothing motivates you to win like losing. When you get your butt handed to you, you spend a week or a month. You have people walking up to you for years saying, if you ever thought about have you thought of what would have happened if? So yeah, you deserve that second chance. You earned that second chance. And he lost in such a tight margin.
Yeah, but he lost his own seat, David.
Yeah, but he was also promising to cut the public service. You could say that that's a sign he's not a craven politician because he actually put something in the game that could put at risk his personal career. No, I'm not saying that. But you could put that idea forward because he knew he had a heavily civil servant riding. All these people call it a safe conservative riding, but it's not a safe conservative riding. He won it from, I think it was David Pratt, the Minister of Defense under Jean Chrétien, and has kept it ever since. But before that, it was handing back and forth. He held it for a really, really long time compared to his predecessors. So, he lost his riding. Okay. Would anybody care if he got the other part right? No. It's the two together. You know what I mean?
Sure. Okay. Let's move on to the United Nations and the fact that it has closed down its New York headquarters. What's this got?
Oh, no, it hasn't closed down its headquarters, but they are going broke because members aren't paying their dues.
Is this like President Trump's, what is it? You need to pay $1 billion to the Board of Peace? Is that what this is like?
Well, kind of, except this is legit. No, but one of the biggest debtors to the UN is the United States. But what the UN is now saying is, well, if we have to make cuts, it's going to be at head office. And we may need to close our office in New York. So what happens to Manhattan when that building empties and all those diplomats leave? And, that's a gap that's really, really hard to fill. You can't get, ambassadors tend to be well-paid people with expense accounts. You can't replace that market so easily. So a lot of restaurants are going to go under, just like High Steakhouse in Ottawa.
I was just going to say, it's like Ottawa without the federal civil service working from the office.
Yeah, and a billion different sets of rules. So, but I just find it very, very neat. But if the UN does start moving that way, it gets really crazy. That's almost, it's the nuclear option. Because, look at how Donald Trump reacted to the Ronald Reagan ad. What is going to happen if the UN starts pulling out its footprint? So I'd like to think that this is a nothing burger. But it was not anonymous sources. It was sources on the record, and it was the New York Times that was talking about this, that published this story. So, this isn't cracked.com. This is legit stuff. And again, with Donald Trump, you don't even have to start pulling your footprint out of Manhattan. Just the talk about it can get him unstable enough that, if he hasn't had enough oatmeal in the morning and he's feeling a bit off, he might declare war on the UN just over the threats and ramp it right back up. Oh, you're mad at us? Well, we're going to pull our troops out of these peacekeeping operations. He is that crazy.
All right, before we take our break, let's get into the distinct difference that you see, David, between the Free Iran and the Free Palestine protests. Because I've heard people talk about this. I haven't yet waded in. What distinct difference do you see?
I see Canadian flags at one set. I do see no Canadian flags at the other. That's the difference I see. I see at these Free Iran protests people who are proudly Iranian Canadian who are protesting what's going on in their homeland. At the Palestinian protests, I see a lot of embarrassment about being Canadian because of what Canada is not doing or not doing. That's the difference I see. One is very positive Canadian. The other one does not seem to be very positive Canadian. And maybe that's legit. Maybe that's not. I'm not going towards the moral righteousness of either side, but I am saying, wow, when I see Canadian flags being waved proudly at a protest, it makes me a little bit more aligned with them because they're a little bit more aligned with me. And I know that's a horrible thing, but it's true. I'm a Canadian and I'm proud of it. I see that flag waving somewhere. I might be a little bit more sympathetic to that cause.
It is a distinct difference.
Very.
Worth pointing out.
And it's not isolated. It's very rare for me not to see a Canadian flag at one of these Iranian protests. I don't know that I've ever seen a Canadian flag that was not being disrespected at one of the Palestine protests.
David Drewe joins us every Monday morning at 11:30 to share Drewe's views, and we'll go from the distinct difference between the Free Iran and Free Palestine protests to bicycle commuters. Brace yourself, and commentary on Danielle Smith's leadership in Alberta. Still to come with Drewe's views this Monday morning on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. On Monday mornings at 11:30, David Drewe joins us to share views. On Drewe's Views, David is a former Conservative Party staffer. He currently operates Negotiating Change, Government Relations, and Stakeholder Engagement Strategies. Got an email from a listener. You know what? Maybe we'll save it because you're going to stick around for calls today, David. So why don't we save the email asking a question? And we'll get to that during calls. Okay, and Jen, we're going to need to turn David's mic back on here.
I haven't.
Hello to the other room. Microphone's on, please. Okay,
Hello.
There we go. What's going on in there? All this lollygagging around. Okay, David, we'll save the question from the email.
If you keep talking to them like that, they're going to unionize.
Calling them lollygaggers?
Yeah, that's abusive.
It's a bunch of lollygaggers. I stole that from Bull Durham. Bull Durham is life in every facet. Let's talk about bicycle commuters, David, and the ongoing struggles in Toronto. Bike lanes, no bike lanes. The Premier says get out. The Charter says you have a right to safe passage. I don't know. Just stop it.
The Charter.
How does the Charter get into this anyway?
Well, you brought it up.
Well, so did the courts. That's why it's in court.
Yeah, I know. That's just it. Like, I have an entirely different thing on bicycles to talk about, and then you have to go bring up the Charter of Rights.
Oh,
and
sorry.
I'm supposed to leave that bait alone? Way to chum the waters. Anyway, yeah. Long story short on that, if the courts believe that bike lanes are a charter right, we should blow up the country and start over again.
We are in so much trouble, aren't we?
But where we're at in Toronto now is apparently the bike lanes weren't cleared in Toronto over the past week. You know, apparently that's a problem because the bikes couldn't get around.
Sure. Nobody else could either.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's just it. And this is enough of a concern and it's being treated legitimately enough that I'm sitting here. No, I'm picking on City News Toronto because this is their story. But it's getting attention. And for everybody who drives, walks, screw you guys. Why are you getting the attention? Nobody can get around. Why is this about bike lanes? When I lived in Ottawa, they put in bike lanes, and they were installed between me looking at the condo and me moving into the condo. And I got to say, Jim Watson was mayor at the time, and he was very responsive to the concerns of the cyclists as well as the non-cyclists who used the streets, like my condo, which all of a sudden, if you were a senior who required paratranspo, the ramp couldn't get to you because the bike lane was too wide for, you know what I mean? Like things like this. So the city put in a little riser of asphalt so that both these things could work.
These are the dumbest things we've ever done.
But this is this to me was the reasonable accommodation part of it. The stupid part was the bike lanes were always cleared in Ottawa. I could be ankle deep in snow consistently on the sidewalks, and cars could be impassable, and you would look at these beautiful bike lanes to the pavement clear. So everybody would walk in the bike lanes. And then all of a sudden there'd be some cyclist coming along at 60 kilometers an hour coming down the hill, screaming at us to get out of the way. And it's like, of course he's angry at us because we're on his bike lane.
But wait, doesn't Ottawa clean the sidewalks too?
Like, so does Toronto.
Yeah, see?
You know what I mean? That's just it. It's like, why is it that bikes, when the bikes in Toronto can't get around, it's headlined that the bike people are complaining they can't get around, like there's anything novel about their situation. You know who really had a gripe probably in Toronto during all of that? People with legitimate mobility issues who were housebound. You know, they had legitimate issues. I'm sorry, your bike lane, in the scale of the snowfall we had,
All right. I've got strong feelings on this after going for dinner with my parents on the weekend, but I'll save that for another time, just because I couldn't drive them home down their own street because of what the city has done here in Kitchener with bike lane, bike path madness. It's insanity, nonetheless. Danielle Smith, you say that the Premier of Alberta, David Drewe, fakes leadership well. What do you mean by that?
I mean that it seems like she is trying to find a release valve for separatist sentiments in Alberta. And for those who aren't aware, there is a petition going around which calls for a referendum on Alberta separation. And Premier Smith recently changed the rules which make it infinitely easier for this petition to become legitimized. You know, the standards for how long you have to collect signatures and how many signatures you need to get, both were immensely loosened. And she keeps saying that she wants, I'm going to paraphrase because I can't remember the quote off the top of my head, but you know, a free and independent Alberta within a strong and united Canada sort of thing. It's like the sweet and sour soup sort of thing. I don't know. But the thing is, she didn't run on any of this. She did not run on any of this. When you look back at how she beat back the NDP, it was with a traditional bread and butter campaign. And there was some anti-Ottawa in there, but it wasn't about a referendum on separation in any way at all. She's doing this to keep her party together. And, you know, this is where I say, God bless the Quebec separatists. They never come at you from the back. They have every election, the Quebec separatists are like, well, yeah, this time we are going to chase a referendum, or no, not this mandate. This mandate, we're going to prepare the conditions for a referendum in the next mandate. Whereas Danielle Smith is like, just I'm going to get an oil pipeline. I'm going to beat up on Ottawa. And then in office, when her party starts getting a little bit twisty on the issue, well, let's make it easier to have a referendum on Alberta independence. And that's not statesmanship. Mainly, I'm grouchy because she's putting, like, even, I have no doubt this referendum will fail if it does happen. But the damage to the province of Quebec from that first referendum, economically, like, I think it was 20 years it took them to recover. Why do you, as a premier, throw this so frivolously on the table for something you didn't even run on?
All right. I think the Albertans want to separate.
I think about 8% of them do.
All right. We'll talk more about that because David's going to stick around for calls during Rant or Rave. We'll get to Phil's question via email about a leftist split. I love talking about the lefties. So all of that's coming up. Rant or Rave, open phone lines for you, and David's going to stick around with us for the next hour on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more. Yakety yak.
Don't talk back.
Just finish cleaning up your room. Let's see that dust fly with that broom. Get all that garbage outside, or you don't go out Friday night.
Don't talk back.
Each and every day between noon and 1, we open the phone lines to hear directly from you. Little something we call the Talkback Hour. And on Mondays, in keeping with tradition here on the show, it's your Rant or Rave Hour. You rant because you're upset about something. You rave because you're not. Maybe you like the fact that Wiarton Willie did not see his shadow today, thus promising us an early spring. Whatever it is, bring your rants, bring your raves, bring your questions for David Drewe to the Talkback Hour today, because David is sticking around to engage in the conversation. 519-570-2545, star 570, and 1-800-570-5715. Let me ask you this, David. Question via email from Phil, and it's one that we get quite a bit on both sides of the political spectrum, some sort of idea of uniting the side of the spectrum that we're talking about, the right, the left. The extreme right reform movement, Phil writes, came about in response to a too-left Eastern Conservative Party. Will current disgruntled Conservatives look to a strong left movement within their party? They don't like how right it is, perhaps, under Pierre Poilievre?
I don't see it happening yet. Like, the problem with questions like that is they are very two-dimensional, and the axes are not. How do you define left or right? No, but seriously, if you want to talk government spending, I'm a pretty right-wing person. If you want to talk about individual freedoms, I'm a very right-wing person. If you want to talk about social conservatism, I'm a moderate conservative. I'm a moderately right-wing. You know what I mean? Like, there's all these different axes, and then you get into the whole tear it down populist versus traditionalist, institutionalist, and there's all these different paradigms, and I don't think it's so much about, you know, the left and the right, so to speak, swinging back and forth in one dimension. It's more like a game of hungry hippos, and it's just totally random. No, but seriously, I don't think, you know, the whole left-right thing had anything to do with abortion when Brian Mulroney broke up, or when the party broke up under Brian Mulroney. They had a free vote on it. Everybody was allowed to vote their way, and as a result, we have no law at all on abortion in Canada. You know, but at some point over the years, that issue became more and more important, and it wasn't so just about money and deficits or business growth versus social spending. These axes change over time, and I think what we've been seeing over the past year or two, Mike, we were talking about the lost generation, how the kids, and you see Pierre Poilievre leading among youth and losing among seniors, which is absolutely not traditional. And that's what I mean. These axes are shifting. I don't know that the Conservative Party's in any trouble at all. But if it does end up having some sort of schism, it will not be along the traditional left-right lines that we think about of the Reform Party.
All right. Let's get to the phones. Hear from you on the Talkback Hour, Rant or Rave. Tony is first. Afternoon, Tony.
Hey, afternoon, Mike. How are you, my friend?
Good, thank you, sir. And you?
I'm good, thank you. I'm going to start off with a bit of a rave, and then it's going to go a little bit of a rant.
Okay.
A few years back, I went to the reporting center, the accident reporting center over there on Pioneer there, and I went there with my wife, and the staff there was extremely helpful. The officers there guided us through what we needed to do, took our report. We were in and out in about 20 minutes, half hour max. Excellent, excellent. I was just there last week with my nephew's wife who just got in a collision, and there was 5 staff members there basically just directing, okay, well, you got your paperwork. Now you need to go over there to the kiosks and fill it out. There was a lineup of people at the kiosks that, and there must have been about 8 people there. We were there an hour because people were trying to figure out how to use it. So I know there are people that listen to your show, the people of power, like, if there's 5 staff members there, why aren't they helping people like they did in the past fill out their accident reports? I mean, there was why are we going to kiosks and then you have to do everything yourself? So, like, what's the point? Like, what's the point of having staff there if they're not going to help you fill it out? So that's my rant. Thanks, Mike.
Okay, Tony, appreciate it. Thanks very much. I think the point of having staff there is for us to pay them. No, David, you don't think so?
Oh, no, I just can't believe you went there.
Why not? Where else would I go? I'm a fiscal conservative, by the way.
I have had one experience with the accident reporting center here in town. It was not recently. It was more than a decade ago. But my experience was a little bit closer to Tony's second experience than his first. It was very much a DIY. Here's a form. Go over there, fill it out. I'll come back and check your work. And, it's like, I don't understand this. I don't understand that. Trying to get help to figure it out how to answer it was not a very responsive place. So I'm thinking he went that first time and he got that person who was new on the job and didn't understand that they were supposed to be crusty. I'm saying that facetiously.
I get it.
I'm going to take this opportunity, though. I have moved out to Wellesley Township, and to any of the MPs who are listening, the Wellesley Township Post Office is amazing. The staff there are so helpful. I have never had service from a post office like this since I was 10 years old in Coppercliff, Ontario.
Wait, we still have post offices?
In the country, we do, and we need them, and they are so nice. You will never be greeted that friendly by a Shoppers Drug Mart postal outlet.
All right. I had a pretty good experience at my Rexall postal outlet the other week, but speaking of MPs, listen up, because I will also shout out my most recent experience in an office like Tony's and yours. It wasn't for an accident report, or a collision report. It was for a new passport. Best office to visit, I would say, in the country.
Did you get it already? Like, did you get?
Oh yeah, this was about a year ago.
Okay, yeah. Like, generally, passport offices are quite good. It's when they go wrong, somehow they go spectacularly wrong. It's like a plane crash. When something goes wrong, a lot of things have gone wrong. But yeah, generally the passport offices are really worth noting that they deliver good customer service.
They really do.
Usually. And that's why it's so notable when they don't. Yeah. And that's why a couple of years back during the pandemic, it was such a big deal.
Sure. Yeah, it was great in Kitchener. Just fantastic in the last year. Jim is next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon, Jim.
Good day, gentlemen. Thanks for taking my call. Mike, I'm calling because I got to tell you, I usually agree with pretty much everything you have to say on the radio, Mike. But I'm not on board with your take on the snow clearing. You're kind of coming to people's, the town's, rescue, if you will. I just want to make a few points here. I'll try to be short. So a few years ago, my father-in-law had a front sidewalk, and this is all inspired by the story you told earlier today, and he was getting tickets for not clearing his sidewalk. Well, I looked it up. I live in Cambridge, and they have a map for the sidewalks that they are responsible for clearing, they being the town. And one of the sidewalks was my father-in-law's. There's no boulevard between the road and the sidewalk, so the town is supposed to come in and clear it. I don't know if that's the case with the gentleman you were talking about earlier today. That might be a factor. But my point is that the town is run very inefficiently, and the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing there half the time. I had to call and tell them, you guys are responsible for clearing this sidewalk. Come and do it. I wanted to mention the flyover death because I feel like people are getting off easy on that. Sure, there was a lot of extenuating circumstances. I'm sure driver error was part of it. Road conditions were part of it. However, if that snow was not up against those barriers the way it was, what would have happened is that woman would have lost control. She would have run into the barriers. She would have had an insurance claim and a sore neck, but she'd still be alive today. Someone's responsible for that. And finally, my last point, all of these towns, they have departments designed for the maintenance and clearing of the roads. Stop making excuses. Stop wasting your time making cute little cartoon characters online. Get out there and shovel some snow. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate it. Lots there. I will go back to the first one because we did share the story this morning. Brian Sandow, who had the city come to his house and clear his snow on his behalf, which means he will get billed. He estimated it at $1,000. I think it usually comes out to a few hundred, but the point stands. And I hear where Jim's coming from, and I've received a lot of feedback electronically since I said what I said. And what I said is this, and I will say again. First of all, I wish that in a winter like this, we all had a little bit more grace. We could give somebody a mulligan because we know the city is not doing a great job on its own sidewalks for sure. However, the rules are the rules. You do get a warning. It's not like they just show up under cover of darkness and clear your sidewalk and leave a bill behind. You get a warning and the chance to make it right. And if you fail to do so, the result is what poor Brian Sandow got. But I don't know what you think of it, David. I'm sure you've seen the story by now.
Yes. I also used to have a sidewalk when I lived in Waterloo that we were responsible for. And the problem was, on a day like today, you'd get a little bit of a melt. And then it would cool off and become glare ice as the melt gathered in puddles on the sidewalk. So it wasn't just a case of shoveling snow. It was a case of going out daily because you were responsible for having it bare to the surface. And so even if there hasn't been snow in a week and you had cleared it after the snowfall, a little bit of this melt, a little bit of this ice, somebody slips, boom, you're warned. So if you have drainage issues, you are worried about your liability all the time. And it is very common for sewer grates to be blocked in the winter, so when you have the melt, it can't go anywhere. So you'll see some sidewalks that are literally underwater in the daytime and a skating rink at night. And I can't blame the owners of the property. So I love the idea of this bylaw. In theory, I think, 24 hours, is that reasonable? I don't know. But then you get into that whole thing about, the end of the snowfall. So if you have like 3 snowfalls in 24 hours, it's at the end of the last snowfall that the clock starts. So there's all these little ways out of that. But just this idea that 24, always has to be scraped to the surface when it has to do with so much more than snow is where I have my part palpitations.
In fairness, though, we've had a week now, I'll knock wood, but it's been a week of virtually no snow. Lots of time for all of us to get caught up on that important work.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. No,
Anyway.
but that's just it. Shovel your darn sidewalk. Be a nice neighbor to your neighbors. It's the courtesy side of things. But once we start talking about these bylaws, I always have to talk about the idiocy of it because they never cleaned my sidewalk. But I got warnings every year just because of that stupid little ice belts here and there. And it's you can go out for 3 days straight and it's fine. And then that one day you're not looking, yellow ticket on your window and it's a warning.
David Drewe sticking around to hear your rants and or raves today. We're here for them. You know the phone lines. We'll take more calls after this on the Mike Farwell Show, 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. On Mondays, your Talkback Hour is a chance to rant and or rave. Make the phone call and rant because you're upset about something, or rave because you're quite happy, in fact. Dave from Cambridge is next. Good afternoon, Dave.
Good afternoon, Mike. I was not going to call, and then Dave, your guest, brought up the subject, and you two talked about it for a brief second, and that was the shoppers and the post office and all that kind of stuff.
Yep.
So, as a coincidence, I was there first thing this morning at the closest Shoppers Drug Mart post office, and the woman there went out of her way to assist me. Unbelievable. So I just thought I'd mention it. Like, I don't have data on my cell phone, and our infamous Rogers system wanted me to have a scan the QR code and all this, and I do not have data on my phone. So she helped me out, work around, and got so she could print the waybill and put it on and help me not only with the waybill but with the receipt, so I'd have an accurate readout of everything. And she spent like 5 minutes helping me out. So I thought I'd give a shout out.
Which Shoppers Drug Mart was that?
Say again?
Which Shoppers Drug Mart postal outlet was that? Just like if you're going to give a rave out to these people, let's let people know where to get the good service.
Well, this is in Cambridge.
Okay.
So it's at Franklin.
Franklin Boulevard?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And she was terrific. Like, unbelievable.
All right, Dave. Appreciate the shout out.
And let's go, Leafs.
Yeah. I love how Dave he almost has to like spit out the word Leafs. Let's go Leafs.
Or was it just like trying to decide, let's go Senators?
Yeah. No, we're not going to we're not doing that.
Pick a name out at random.
I wondered if it was going to be
No, I wouldn't name that team.
Kitchener Rangers. No, Dave would not name that team either. And Franklin Boulevard, good thing it's such a short street in Cambridge. You'll find Franklin, it's a long way. Either way.
It's at the roundabout.
But exactly what I was thinking. At which roundabout is it, Dave? But here's what I'm wondering, David Drewe. Is there a PR press going on within the ranks of Canada Post to treat everybody with utmost care? Because, you want the public on your side since you've been battling over a contract for 18 months, almost 2 years now.
I don't think so.
No?
I don't. I just think that...
Be more like me. Look for some dirt here.
Well, no, I think it's really just, we started this chain of talking about good service in places that traditionally you don't think of it, and I'm waiting for somebody to call in with a Service Ontario story next.
Well, it kind of started that way with Tony, right? With the collision reporting. All right, Andre is next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon, Andre.
Good afternoon, Mike and Mr. Crazy Dave. Crazy people are very smart, and I really love listening to you, Dave. And what I have to say, I have a rave for the retro rink roller skate, Mike. My kids love it. They go there once a week. Pardon me?
Good.
Yes, and it's there. I love it. Another thing is Friday, Mike. See, 3 points. Friday was Farwell Lazar. Is that the one that went on vacation and got into an accident on ATV?
Yes.
Wow, that was ever nice to hear her back. I really enjoyed that, her being back. And
I had some good conversations with her during the breaks, asking her about her recovery, because like you, it was the first I'd seen or heard of her since hearing about the accident. So she seems to be doing quite well.
You know how much I listen.
Andre's with us. He's a P1, we call him in the business, David.
And
every
Mike,
day. Yes, Dave. Yes,
I'm
Andre.
very sorry. I know I'm taking a lot of time, but I got a question that's always been on my mind. Now, you have about 300-400 people with you, right? Now, when are you going to be the Great Pumbaa? Do you agree on that, Mr. Drewe?
All right, Andre. That's a good one. We got a minute left before the news update. What the point of that question?
I think I'll just say, I don't know about great, but he's a pretty good Pumbaa.
I've always said the only way I will ever run for office is if they create the position of Grand Pumbaa within a newly amalgamated region of Waterloo. So the question should really be, is it time, David? Can we get rid of 2 tiers of local government? Say yes. Please say yes.
Oh, I think that's a good first step. I'm becoming more and more convinced that we should get rid of local government.
Get rid of local government entirely?
Yeah. It's the only way we're going to get rid of the NIMBYism is to have these decisions made far enough away that a couple complainers can't stop because a building's going to block their sunlight. You know, we need intensity. That requires sacrifices, and local governments are just a little bit too close. And that's how we keep ending up making decisions in favor of the current owners as opposed to the future needs that we have.
Or the people that like to ride bicycles make decisions in favor of them too. Okay, I see what you did there, David Drewe. David is sticking around for Rant or Rave today. He's as interested as I am in hearing your rants and or raves. So keep them coming. It's your Talkback Hour Rant or Rave edition on the Mike Farwell Show. We're here on 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Your Monday edition of the Talkback Hour is your chance to rant and or rave. You rant because you're upset about something. You rave because you're not. I, for one, will say thank you for the sunshine. It was sunny all weekend, colder than charity, but nice and sunny, and I'll take it.
If you were out of the wind, I found the weekend gorgeous. I was just sitting on the veranda on the sunny side of the house, no shade. You know, I've got my snow pants on and my coat, but I was just sitting there reading.
Yeah, but you're from Sudbury. You do that stuff.
Well, yeah, but it wasn't that bad if you were out of the wind. Like, it was, like, with that sun, if you were in the sun, it was beautiful. Beautiful.
I actually found, despite the temperature, Saturday was a nicer day than Sunday. We must have gotten into the wind, Rosie and I, when we did our walk on Sunday, because Saturday was the more pleasant day to be out. For us, anyway.
Hey, I'll take both of them.
Yeah, me too. And I'm looking forward to our walk this afternoon. But most forward, we, David and I together, are looking to your calls here during Rant or Rave. So let's get right back to the phones. Preston Paul, Farwell's Force member number 45. Good afternoon, Paul.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Enjoying your beautiful day?
Indeed we are.
Yeah. Conservative Charlie this morning, but he had a great idea. Get that Wyerton Willie in there and put a C on him.
Captain of the Toronto Maple Leafs, David. That's what Charlie wants for Wyerton Willie instead of Austin Matthews.
Because he shows up to play at least once a year?
Ayo.
Yeah. I'm glad he didn't see a shadow. I just prayed the Lord that we have an early spring.
The sooner the better, Paul.
Yes, I can't wait to listen to this show and you on a nice, sunny, warm day sitting out on the deck instead of freezing my butt off in the garage.
I like that idea.
You guys have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. You too. Is it just me, David? Listen, as somebody from Sudbury, are we seeing winters here now, the likes of which you saw there? Is this more like a Sudburyan winter?
In a lot of ways, yes.
Yeah.
We've had a lot more of the crisp cold days as opposed to the humidity cold days.
Right.
The winds have been drier. It's been a dry cold winter, not a wet, humidity winter like we usually get around here. So that's the big one. But for what it's worth, they're having a bit of a record winter up there too. So,
are they?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think we're all just ready to be.
No, but we were
on.
due for this. It's 2
years in a row, David. Yeah, I'm worried that this is the sign of a trend.
Well, yeah, but a 1 year is never a trend. A 2 year, yeah, that's a trend. The question is it a third year? It's not going to be 10 years.
I hope not.
Like, we had some of the mildest winters on record in the past decade. So.
I was liking those winters. Let's bring them back.
Well, yay, global warming. Hand me some CFC spray.
Exactly. I'll put some hairspray on if that's what it takes. Even me. Yes, I will. Mary is next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon, Mary.
Oh, good afternoon. And I'm so happy that Dave stayed on.
Yeah, he likes doing this because...
I love him.
Well, there you go.
I'm telling my wife you said that.
And he's so smart.
He's a smart cookie. That's why we bring him on the show.
Well, yeah. That is very good. And I've got a different thing to say, but as he had said on Saturday, my daughter has a cottage on Kettle Point, and it was a girls' weekend, and they sat out all Saturday afternoon with a bonfire, with a fire with the logs, and enjoyed it. You know, you have to find the loveliness that you can.
Capture every moment.
Yeah, Dave.
Well, I'm glad they were at Kettle Point, not in Waterloo, because you can't have a fire with logs in Waterloo.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Well, you can't do. Anyway, the other thing was, that I think we should stop the expensive gun buyback.
Oh, here we go.
And give the money to the poor or the food banks. Come on with your coming on. And I'm sorry that Preston Paul is not with us anymore because he would have a good rant on the guns. I loved that.
All right, Mary. Thank you.
No, we need money to stop the gun buyback.
Okay, I got you. And not to be confused with Preston Paul, who just called. Paul from Preston, our late great friend, Farwell's Force member number 3. Your thoughts, David, on the gun buyback program and the $750 million being spent on it?
Well, I'm going to start off with I think it says something that so few police departments think it's worth any resources of their own or participation of their own. It's not even just about the money at that point. They're like, hey, federal government's spending that much money, but it's not worth our time. And that is the biggest statement of all to me about it. And I hear some people saying that it's absolutely wrong that the police are able to ignore a program like this. And I remember during the pandemic, when for that one weekend, Doug Ford had that stupid law that shut down outdoor playgrounds.
Oh, I remember.
And police across the province were saying, we are going to ignore that law. So if they could ignore a law, of course they could ignore participating in a gun buyback program that is totally voluntary and beyond the scopes of their mandate. So, in terms of the police, are they doing the right thing or not? I really do trust them a lot more than politicians on how to devote their resources, especially when they're speaking in such mass. And I agree, though, this program is a waste of money.
Regional Police Chief Mark Crowell, Staff Sergeant Scott Griffiths will be with us on the show tomorrow for the monthly Ask the Chief, and that will be coming up with Chief Crowell, our gun buyback program, and how Waterloo Regional Police are responding to the legislation.
And who made that decision? Was it an operational decision by the police? Was it made at the board level? Was it, and how did they arrive at it? Was it one person? Did they sit down and talk about it? I'm just really curious about how that decision was made, not just, I just said it all already. I don't need to repeat.
I will pay attention to that very thing when we have the conversation with the chief tomorrow. Nathaniel is next on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon, Nathaniel.
Good afternoon. I have a bit of a rant about the 570 News app. But, when I go into it, I installed it yesterday. When I go into it, the top 3 stories are an hour old, and then the next few stories are less than an hour old, and the story after that is 3 hours, then a few less than an hour old, etc., etc., etc. That really aggravates me.
Okay, what do you want the app to do differently?
If they could put the most recent stories at the top and then older stories more towards the bottom, that would be nice.
Okay, Nathaniel, from your lips to whoever operates the app's ears, get the most recent stuff up there first. I wish I had control over the app. I wish I had control over a lot of things. I think the world, certainly this city, would run better if I had control over it, but unfortunately, that's out of my hands. But we'll make sure that gets passed along to the powers that be, and thank you for pointing it out.
I don't use the 570 app, but just to say, this is not alone on you guys, I do use the CBC app, and their local section is very, very hit and miss. I'm just looking through it now. Oh, yeah, so we have a new study shows that the shingles vaccine could protect against dementia. That's very Waterloo Region.
No, it's not.
Brantford Police, that's close enough.
Okay.
Catherine O'Hara tributes pour in because, she spent so much time in Waterloo Region. Restaurant industry fared. OPP not taking part in buyback program. Oh, here's the big one. Poilievre to pitch members on keeping his job as conservative leader in convention speech. Music in the key of C. Federal, provincial governments to strengthen childcare system. None of this is local. You know what I mean? So You create these beasts and you got to feed them.
Exactly.
And
that's the thing, David.
It is not the priority for any of these businesses to be running an app.
Right.
So the problem is you've created it. And you know, Mike, I'm usually up your butt about the podcasts and how they're up or if they're not up or how they're stamped. You know, you create these beasts and people expect you to feed them.
Every day, this show does get archived online and as a podcast to your favorite podcast apps. We always like to recommend Seeker, Seek Your Sounds, Seekr. But David, you nailed it. And as an old guy, yes, I am a dinosaur and I admit it. And quite frankly, I'm proud of my Brontosaurus roots, okay? I will tell you that you want live, local, up to the second, you get it right here. This moment is what you're getting as... In my day, we would call it out of the box. What's coming out of your box, your speakers, your radio right now. I know. We've created these things. We have to feed them.
No, but if you really need local content, you could go to the CBC Kitchener-Waterloo site and read about fake passports, $65 million US, and an Interpol red notice. Canadian crypto fugitive vanishes after arrest in Serbia from the Fifth Estate. This is the local content that the government is paying for.
There you go.
But it's the app. I'm sorry. I made it sound like it's a CBC thing. It's an app
It's
thing.
an app thing. Or you can have the 570 News Radio live thing right here with David and I.
And the Seeker app.
Right now. And the Seeker app. Seekr. Seek Your Sounds. Kyle is with us on Rant or Rave. Good afternoon, Kyle.
Good afternoon. I got a rave. What a Scotties final last night. Did you watch it or no?
Did not.
Very good. It was very exciting till the last rock in overtime, and Team Canada won, but that poor girl from, I think it was Manitoba, she was trying to get that last rock and hit her rocks and popped off, and Canada won. But I love watching the Scotties, and now I can't wait for the Brier.
It's like you were speaking another language there. Hit her rocks, popped off. What are you even saying right now, Kyle?
I'm not a curler, my friend. All I know is they yell all the time. That's it. They
Very
scream,
hard.
They yell, and then they enjoy it, and the rock hits the other one. So, yeah. Yeah. Lord, hard go! Whoa, whoa, whoa! Yep, that's it, right? So, thanks, guys.
All right, Kyle, thank you. It's the randomness of a call from Kyle. I thought he was going to tell me about his walk to the hockey arena on Friday night. He promised he was walking to the Listable Cyclones game.
I can't help with that, but I really just do love the randomness, and it's generally quite positive.
Yes. From Kyle?
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Let's get one more in before the break. Rosa, are you a first-time caller to this show?
Yes, I am.
Oh, Rosa, welcome aboard.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
I love your show. I always listen to you whenever I don't have a shift. Usually I'm my way to work. But I have a rave for you, Mike.
Okay. She needs a number before you let her go. She needs a number for Farwell Force.
Okay.
Oh, for sure. I take it proudly. So my full name is Rosa. Everybody call me Rosa because it's easier to remember, and I like that. I have a rave because I'm a proud Canadian, but I was born and raised in Iran. I'm 100% sure that you both and so many other people that listening to this radio show knows about what's happening in Iran. I don't want to get to the politics of it because, again, we all do know what's happening. I just wanted to thank all my Canadian friends that reached out and say hi to me and ask me what we are doing. I love them. I love my friends. I love their passion and being a human being. And most of them, their heart goes to the people, especially the young people that they were killed in the streets of Iran, all the cities. But this really warmed my heart to see that people here think about people over there because we are all human beings and we are all connected and we are nothing without each other. So yesterday we had a big demonstration in Toronto and right now I really want to say sorry for the inconvenience that we made or we caused for people that was there. I'm so sorry about that, but 160,000 people showed up in Dundas Square and chanted freedom for Iran. Thank you, guys.
Thank you,
Thank
Rosa.
you.
Great to hear from you today. And we hope you're doing all right.
That was crazy. That was cool. Like, that was just like, it sounded like she was about to break up with gratitude at some points during that.
It certainly was.
But it goes back to what I was saying. There's like a certain amount of gratitude when I was talking about there's Canadian flags present. Like, you heard this patriotism about Canada in the context of this protest, whereas that's very absent from the Palestinian ones. And maybe justifiably, I'm not saying it's not, but again, it's such a big difference.
And there you go, Nathaniel. Not going to get that on an app, are you? George in Cambridge, you're next on Rant or Rave.
Yes, I want to give a big rave out to my daughter after 5 years of university. She's graduating soon, and I wanted to ask David for some advice. She's going to become a public policy maker with the Doug Ford government. What help or advice can you give to a young lady about to enter politics?
All right. Don't say don't, David.
No. I first of all, milk it for all it is worth. The diversity of experiences and skills and wisdom that you develop a very short time working in a role like that will benefit you the rest of your life. People are noticed for doing good work and keeping their heads down. You don't want to be the loudest person in the room, but you want to be the person who's quick to volunteer and take more on. Find that one person who respects you and make them your rabbi. Find somebody who's been around longer than you and suck all the advice you can out of them with a weekly coffee. And honestly, enjoy every minute of it. It's going to be a ride. It's going to be a ride.
Doug Ford must be on a hiring spree. A colleague of ours that had been working in game night operations with the Kitchener Rangers is starting this. I think today is his first day with Doug Ford. He's going to be right in the Premier's office at Queen's Park.
Ooh.
So there you go.
Yeah. Honestly, though, these positions are quite often high churn. You work long hours, and especially depending on the role, like if you're advanced, you don't have that much time with the Premier, and you're always traveling. There's a lot of turnover, so they are always hiring. And then there's also just changing needs.
George, best of luck to your daughter.
Yes.
And best of luck to your bank account now that she's off the bank of mom and dad, one would suppose, now that she's done school. It's Rant or Rave. I just kid on the Mike Farwell Show. 570 News Radio and Rogers TV. Final minutes of Rant or Rave this afternoon. Right back to the phones. Get as many calls as we can. Maria, good afternoon.
Hello there, Mike and Dave. I just have a comment briefly about the police reporting center. My 85-year-old friend was in a collision a year ago, October, and I offered to go with her because I knew those kiosks were a hell of a thing to manage, and she was so grateful that I was there to help her because it's very cumbersome, and she has neuropathy, so she could barely even tap the screens. So that's the one thing about the police reporting center, and they don't help you unless you go up to the counter to ask for help. The other thing is, I've been away in the Caribbean, and I missed your show.
Well, I appreciate that, but come on, Maria. Why don't you take us with you?
I know. And then I get back to this, what I call minus ridiculous temperatures. So thank you again, and a happy Monday to you all.
Thank you, Maria. It's
Happy
nice
Monday.
to hear from you. Back from the Caribbean. Okay, we can get one more in. Mark, last word to you.
Hi, Mike.
Hi, Mark.
Just going back to the story about the guy who got dinged by the city of Kitchener on the sidewalk.
Yes.
That is a bunch of BS, Mike. I can't believe it.
Mark, rules
If I
are
were
rules.
I'd fight it.
Okay.
And get him on your show.
All right. I'm sorry, Mark, because we're so short of time, but I wanted to give David a final chance to weigh in or speak his piece on that. I should try to get Brian on the show.
You should.
Yeah.
You should.
Okay.
It could be fun. Either way, it could be really fun.
Well, and we are here for fun after all, aren't we?
Well, I mean, there's something there. It's interesting. They would need to ask him a couple questions.
All right. We're gonna track down Brian. We're gonna see how many other warnings he got before he finally had the city come and find out if he's fighting the bill that he will certainly receive. Hey, thanks for sticking around today. It's always nice having company here on Rant or Rave.
Thanks for letting me. I enjoy the listeners. It's random.
They
You know what I
enjoy
mean?
it. It's so
really
random.
enjoy the randomness.
You and me both. That's why we do the Talkback Hour every day. And I tell every kid that wants to get into broadcasting, you have not lived until you've done open lines for an hour, even just 1 hour. We do it 1 hour every day.
Remember in the 80s, there was this TV show about late night talk radio?
Sure do. This is midday talk radio. That's David Drewe. He joins us every Monday morning at 11:30 for Drew's Views, and sometimes he sticks around. I'll be back tomorrow morning at 9. We'll do this all over again, including a Talkback Hour, okay? My name is Mike Farwell. You are a force for good. Bye for now.